Okay, good morning, folks. Yeah, might have to. I also got this handy dandy orange tape. Let's get going, folks. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Yeah. Okay, good morning. I call the meeting to order. This is the regular council meeting for the Region of Queens Municipality. On this July 14th, I call the meeting to order at 9:01 and recognize and acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, more specifically Gaspawick, and we're all treaty people. Approval of the agenda. Council, any additions, revisions to the agenda circulated this morning? Councilor Fancy?
Yes, I'd like to give a report on the library committee, and that would be under 13, it'll be 13.4.
13.4, update from, so that's the South Shore Library Committee?
Yes.
Okay, or South Shore Library Board, yep. Okay, any other additions or revisions to the agenda circulated, Council? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Oh, that's right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll also look to add 14.2 under new business, an amendment to administration policy, admin policy number 3, concerning committees of council and council appointments. Again, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended, that's moved by the Deputy Mayor. Second? Seconded by Councillor Carver. All those in favor? Call it adopted or approved. Then we have adoption of the minutes from the regular council meeting of June 23rd, for which I was absent due to an illness. But in review of those minutes, any revisions? Any revisions to those minutes are circulated? No? Okay, look for adoption of the minutes then. Moved by Councillor Jenkins, seconded by Councillor Wenzel. All those in favor? Call them adopted. That brings us to public comments. Always appreciate members of our community speaking to council. It's an important part of the engagement process. Is there any members of the public who would like to address council this morning? Come on up. Please state your name and the community in which you reside. You do. You got to hit the gray button and it will illuminate, and then this light will come on as well. Yeah, no, sorry, the laptop is kind of in your way. You got that gray button at the base of the microphone. There you go. So if you could limit your comments to 5 minutes, address your comments to me as the chair of the meeting, and take it away.
Okay. Deborah Herman Spartanelli, 7438 Highway 3, Somerville Center.
Deborah, you might just grab that microphone and kind of point it a little bit more. There you go. That's going to pick you up better. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I'm here as the chair of the region-appointed pool committee. We received the staff letter on Friday recommending 3 options, one being not approving the revised mandate. We would like to have some time to meet and respond, so we asked the council to defer 13.1 on the agenda. Thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Deborah. You just hit the microphone, please. Thanks. Is there any other members of the community who would like to address council this morning? Any other public comments? I'll ask one more time. Any other public comments? Hearing none, that will conclude our public comments section of the meeting. On to delegations and presentations. So I am pleased to introduce the Rural Water Watch Association, who's going to provide us with a brief presentation this morning on their work. Take it away. You're going to have to hit that as well. There you go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure to be here today. I was asked to give a quick, brief sort of outline of who we are, what we do. So I've been accused many times of talking fast, so I'll try to kind of slow it down. My presentation has 24 slides, but I'm going to skip through a lot. When I give presentations, there's always go back. Can you go back and give more information about this? So I'll go through it, and if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. So, Rural Water Watch. Okay, there we go. So I kind of framed this up as the kind of like the 5W, who, what, where, when, why, those kinds of things. So who is Rural Water Watch? We're a Canadian charity. Our focus is on education. We grew out of a project at Dalhousie University that needed a little bit of help, so I joined this project, and we mostly work in rural Nova Scotia communities on well water issues. We have a board of directors, very well represented from the both academic sort of stream, but also from, we're fairly diverse. I'm not going to really spend much time on that. Pretty proud of these guys, all young, except for me. So what do we do, and where do we do it? So we basically educate and create awareness around well water quality and quantity is becoming pretty apparent these days, and the connection with public health or individual health. So that's kind of our shtick. That's where our wheelhouse is. We build capacity in communities, so we go out, we teach people how to do things, and then they can take it from there. And our priority is actually in marginalized communities. That's where we started, but we will go anywhere we're asked to go. So why do we do it, and what are the issues? So I'm a geologist by training, and a hydrogeologist, and a planner. And so I like to sort of connect all those kinds of things together. And one thing I know about many talks I've given on geology when I was in government and things like that is most people don't know what's going on underneath your feet. So there's this lack of awareness about what's under your feet, our water, where does it come from, and that connection to health. So the other thing that we've developed, I'm going to show a list of barriers. There's many barriers that a lot of people like us might not even think about in terms of what other people might face in some of these rural communities. There's a lack of testing, therefore we don't know what the water quality is, and there could be potential long-term or acute illnesses associated with water quality. Our kind of perception about water is, can't we just get another lake? Can't we just drill deeper? Let's just do something new. And we try to look at how do we use what we have in an efficient manner. And we think that municipalities have kind of a critical role in helping to disseminate information, being there to answer questions, host events, things like that. So these are our barriers to action. I'm not going to go through the whole list. I think in your package of information you may have this list, but it's a list. It's not like one or two things. It's a list of things. And at the very bottom of this list, so some of these things you might be able to pick out, like financial. People don't test. They don't want to know what their water is because they might have to, do something about it, sort of thing. So that's part of it. Those are some of the easy ones to pick out. But it's the apathy. A lot of people we talk to, they just kind of go, well, I don't know what it is, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so I'm not going to test my water, right? So that's one of the problems. But these barriers lead to inaction and fear, and it causes a stress in some communities. In some communities, there's no issues, right? Another reason why we do this, I'm not going to go through all these again, but this is sort of a cross-section of communities where we've worked. You can see that there's African Nova Scotia communities, and then halfway down the middle of the slide, there's non-African Nova Scotia communities. So we work in different communities across the province. But what's kind of interesting is you look at some of these. So the N is the number of samples that we took. So like say the second one down on the left-hand side, we had 27 samples that we submitted. We only did this one for bacteria, and we had 81% of those samples exceeded. So they failed, basically. So that's significant, but what's even scarier is that 22% of those had E. coli in the water. That can make you very sick, and if you have a compromised immune system or young kids, small kids, babies, you can die, right? So don't want to scare anybody, but that's the truth of it. And then if we go to other communities, you can see sort of a smatting. 58% had bacteria, 14% had E. coli. So it's not one community's issue. These are across the province, many different communities. So how do we do it? What do we do? We go into communities, we talk to residents, we try to figure out what's happening. We try to listen as much as we can. We use that community-focused approach because there's strength in communities. They've already have little networks built, so we try to leverage those networks that exist out there already. We ask residents, what do you know, what you don't know? So when we do that and we figure out what they may or may not know, we can actually develop our messaging to meet the receptors. What will they understand? If I talk about hydrogeological things, they just tune out. So we have to talk about, well, groundwater is this, it's under your, those kinds of things. So we try to use plain language as much as possible. And we have 5 main activities. Am I going too fast, or are we okay? Okay. So we do things that are called Healthy Wells workshops and presentations. I've done these in libraries. I started in the South Shore Public Library system, so that was kind of great. I've done probably 3 or 4 there now. And then I'll just go through the topics, and then I'm going to show you some quick slides. So we talk about wells and groundwater just to get everybody on the same page, and then we talk about how do you take care of it. We have a 4-point action plan that people can actually do when they go home from this. We talk about climate change and how that affects private wells or private water supplies. Not everybody's on a well. And then we have demonstrations. We bring in things, show people how to do things, and we show them resources. So just quick, again, I'm not going to go through the details, but feel free to contact me with the questions. So again, we just talk about the difference between wells. Why do you have certain kinds of contaminants in one well versus the other well? This is our 4-point action plan. The idea was to create a puzzle. There's 4 pieces to the puzzle. These, you test, you protect the well area, you maintain the well and its system, and you treat if necessary. So these things go together, and this is sort of what hopefully will get you clean water. The biggest part of this thing here is on the left-hand side. You can't taste, you can't smell, and you can't see contaminants necessarily. You might be able to, but in many cases you can't. So I'll just leave it at that. So to protect the well area, I've actually gone into communities, going to individual wells and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you have to check this, you got to do this, remove that. So that's what this is about, protecting the well area. Some people might be familiar with source water protection plans. I'm not sure. Anyway, this is the same kind of thing, but it's on a much smaller scale where you're protecting the well area from any potential contaminants. One of the ones that comes up the most, I call them pet visitation areas. So animals will go and do their business around the well for whatever reason. So the other thing are rodents or deer, that their waste gets on the ground, it infiltrates down, and it can contaminate the water supply. Again, this is pretty standard. If your well is broken, fix it. And don't be surprised if you have problems if there's cracks in your well or missing caps, things like that. That's kind of a funny one, actually. So this one here, I asked the guy, I said, gee, in the middle picture there, I said, gee, you must have got a bad batch of well crocs. And he said, no, I actually backed into to the well and broke it. So anyway, okay. And then treat. Our organization, we don't tell people how to treat their water. We don't give advice, but we provide information that they can make choices. It's like anything else. Go get 3 quotes, ask a lot of questions, make sure you understand what they're saying, and not play them off against each other, but try to figure out what exactly they're trying to sell you. Again, we talk about climate change and private wells. Private wells are one of the areas, especially in Nova Scotia, where you're going to see climate change happen the fastest, because we're seeing it right now, right? Wells are drying up, right? And there's a lot of sort of technical issues that can happen with droughts. I'm not going to go into those. Just keep in the back of your mind that climate change can impact water from a chemical perspective and from availability, right? For like droughts, things like that. Pretty obvious, I think. We do talk about sea level rise. We work with Dalhousie University on a project they had been working on coastal zone issues, and so we do bring that up as well. In our Oh, I'm doing pretty good. So we have a series of resources. We like to have resources that will have a shelf life. So the idea is that this little checklist is a downloadable checklist, and the idea is to maybe get people to actually pin it on their fridge. And so they can go out and they can do one of those things, or none of them, and then the next week do 5 of them. So it's sort of an ongoing checklist of things that you can do to take control, take some level of control of what, to maintain your well system and the quality of your water. On our website, we provide a whole bunch of links in terms of either water testing, there's a bunch of very technical stuff. Still working with government to try to get things a little bit easier in the hands of people. Also, one of those barriers is some people don't have access to the internet, they don't have a smartphone, they don't have a computer. So there's another reason why libraries are really important, because people can go to the library and access the internet. And every library staff person I've dealt with has been absolutely phenomenal in terms of, yeah, we love people to come in, and it's really good. It's a great relationship we have there. We do community sampling events. I'm not going to, again, go into all this. We show up. It's kind of, we get invited. We go. We help train the volunteers, which takes like literally 5 minutes. And then we do an event. When we do our events and when we present information, we hope that we address all of these barriers. So that's why this slide has them all crossed out. We talk to people. We try to reinforce, just do a little bit to get started. Check this, check that. And the only things that we have trouble with sometimes is this pride and stress. People don't want to know what their water is, or they have a fear and things like that. And apathy is another issue. So we look at our events that we do and the materials that we produce as a way to help combat these barriers. We kind of made up a kind of a funny name. We call them public library water information stations. So in 33 public libraries in the province, we have materials that people can take home with them. They are the rack cards in the middle there, which I don't know if they were given out or... Okay, so you'll get these rack cards. So it's actually one card that's double-sided, and the idea is to try to cram as much information on there as possible so that people can take that home. Somebody at one of the libraries said, hey, don't give sheets of paper because they just get crumpled and thrown out. If you have a rack card, it's more likely to be saved and taken home and maybe put on the fridge, things like that. And they also suggested bookmarks. So the message is just what's in your water, and on the back, go to our website to have start a conversation type thing. Hopefully that makes some sense. That's the rack card. You'll get those, I think. Then the initiative and partners. So again, I mentioned South Shore Public Libraries, but we've been in other public libraries across the province. Dalhousie University, government has, they've been very great in terms of providing funding for us, limited funding. And then again, we just try to develop partnerships as much as we can. On the right-hand side of the screen there, I've given talks at 2 national conferences now. We are kind of a unique entity across Canada. There's not a lot of charities that are dedicated to this kind of work. A lot of times it's either government or some community group that takes it on, but this is kind of a unique thing. So we were asked to talk about 2 different things: the challenges that are in communities, and then we have something called Healthy Wells Day, which is coming up in a second here. I'll show you that. Healthy Well, there it is. Healthy Wells Day. So we've been doing this since 2018 or 2019. So the third Sunday in October. It's on a Sunday because it has to do with lab times if we're doing a sampling event. So we just pick that day as the easiest day to do it. Some people, people are off usually. And so we have different events. We might do something online. We might do something in a community, just different things like that. The picture in the middle there is actually in Walden. And they wanted to have a Healthy Wells Day event where people came, collected up the samples, and then went home and did the water testing. That's it. I don't know how much time I took, but hopefully I was okay. So questions?
Go ahead, Councilman Wetzel. You're just going to have to turn off your microphone to accept questions. Thanks very much for your presentation.
Thanks for the report. I'd like to know if you've done any work around the Tri-Lake Maliga area where I understand there's, which I know, there's a very high arsenic content within all the wells along those lakes. I think it's because of past gold mining, which created a lot of that, and I'm just wondering if you've done any work there, or if it is possible to have you invited to do some work there.
There's two questions. So, I used to work in government, and I was in the Department of Natural Resources for 20 years, something like that. And so I'm quite familiar with arsenic in Nova Scotia. So the arsenic in Nova Scotia is actually a function of the geology. In some ways, it could have something to do with mining if the mine processed a lot of materials and then they took all that waste and stuck it in a lake or whatever. But in wells, it's generally not from, okay, I'm going to correct myself here, it's generally not from mining. In some of the older towns in Nova Scotia, when mining in the 1860s, we'll say, to the early 1900s, what towns would do is, as the mine was being built and they did the blasting and things like that, those rock come out nice and angular. They would actually use that rock to rock up their wells. And so you're actually putting, material in there that has arsenic in it, right? So that has been a problem in some places. So the arsenic, all in the drilled wells and in some dug wells, the arsenic, manganese, iron, things like that. We have seen that in some of our things, so we call them exceedances. So we have seen that. What I didn't show on my slide there of the exceedances, there was a category called metals, and a number of the ones that we've done. Let me see, in East Preston, I'm trying to think where else. There's been a few communities where we do see that arsenic. We did test, we just did an event in Broad Cove a month ago, whatever it was, and we did test for metals, and we got those back, and a couple had exceedances for arsenic. Yeah, so it's a natural phenomenon. In almost all cases, it's a natural phenomenon. It's more prevalent in drilled wells than in dug wells, but some dug wells can have certain metals that you should know about, sort of thing. And would we do something? Yeah, if we're invited to help out and organize a sampling event, we'll do it.
Yeah, kind of following up what Councillor Winslow said, I know up in North Queens, arsenic is very strong in the wells. And again, that's a gold mining out that way, up in Whiteburn and such as. While you come into Liverpool, there's not much arsenic. It's not an issue. It seems to be, I don't know if it's coincidental or whatever, but it seems to be in the areas where it's gold mining.
Right. I mean, that's good. That's a really good observation. So that's entirely true. So gold and arsenic are found in the same environment. They come out in the same environment, so that's how they're found. If you look at a geology map of Nova Scotia, you can see bands, and you can almost chart where the gold mines are, and where there's gold mines, there's arsenic. But there's also arsenic in other places too. So it's a function of geology. In fact, when you're searching for gold, you often look for arsenic as a pathfinder, because if there's arsenic, there might be gold. So it's kind of a neat but kind of toxic way of kind of looking at that. So yeah, it's a good observation, and I could talk about that for a couple hours, but I don't think we have time for that.
Thanks very much for your presentation. There's a lot of private water sources here in the region of Queens. Definitely drought and concerns with drought and drying wells is a big thing for us, and I'm sure that we have a lot of under-tested or a lot of blind spots as it relates to our water sources. So what does it look like as a process in terms of, you say, inviting you in? I think that we could take advantage of a lot of these things in terms of getting our branches through the social libraries, engaged with those materials or activities. And the information sessions and the testing days, I think I would be supportive of us taking advantage of all those types of things. So what does that process look like in working with your organization?
It's pretty simple. I'm the executive director, and I get paid 1 day a week for doing it. So there's a lot that comes in, but basically you just contact me and say, we want you to do a presentation wherever, at one of the libraries, or we go to community centers. I've done them in fire halls. You just call, ask, we set up a date. What do you want? There's sort of a variety of things. Sometimes we go and give a presentation and we bring the bottle, so we bring all the bottles and everything with us, and then I can take them to the lab. There's a discount because we get a bulk, bulk order, and then I can kind of control the chain of command. It's not going out everybody. So people would show up, listen to the presentation, go home with the bottle, come back and drop it off, or communities have distributed the bottles the night before, for example, and then they just bring them in the next day. So there's a range of ways of doing it. It's depending on how you what you want and how you want to do it. Sometimes it's a presentation, then 2 weeks later, is this on?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. A couple weeks later, it might be like an event.
Right.
So it's very flexible. We've done it enough times now that I could do a pop-up if I had the bottle, so I could do a pop-up event in 20 minutes in the parking lot.
Right.
So it's very quick. We have a quick turnaround time. So it's really just you getting organized. We kind of say, if you want a presentation or any sort of event, it should be maybe 2 weeks' notice, just to be able to give people an opportunity to think about if they want to go or not. So it's pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking we're piloting and rolling out, and it's actually on the agenda today, a rural water initiative to build sort of community resilience around dealing with challenges around access to water. And so I think there could be an opportunity to engage with you folks and sort of dovetail some of that program with some of these great resources that you have available. Any other questions, Council? Go ahead, Councilor Mero.
Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting here to see that your well water should be tested every 2 years, and it's recommended to test for bacteria every 6 months. I know some people has gone like 20 and 30 years and never had their well tested, so it's nice to point that out. Thank you.
I'm going to respond to that because I think the government just changed that to, and now I have a whole bunch of cards I have to change. I think they just changed it. I have to check on this, but there was talk about changing the bacteria to once a year and the metals to 5 years. Metals don't change that much unless there's something significant happening in the area. Bacteria can change rapidly. So, and then the other thing is if there's any change in your water quality, any change at all, taste or sediment, get your water tested. So, yeah, but yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks very much for your presentation. And I think we will be in touch. Council, I think it would be great to think about your own communities that you represent and where it might be a good idea, what sort of, what venue or what type of activity would be most beneficial to the, to the residents that you represent. Okay. So there are no unfinished business for today's agenda. So we'll move on to staff reports, the first of which is pertaining to the old burial ground wall rehabilitation. I see that we have Mr. Chetwin joining us today for that report. Take it away, Garrett.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So today we're here to talk about the old burial ground wall rehabilitation. We've talked about it several times before. I think just over a year ago, we issued a proposal to find contractors to replace the wall as part of last year's capital program, which resulted in that proposal coming back at 3 times the estimated budget. So we're back again with a new proposal for replacement that would utilize gravity retaining wall blocks as a more efficient means to replace. So I guess a couple of options, and we'll go through a bit of an analysis. So to replace the wall with the gravity retaining blocks, so remove the existing deteriorating wall and construct a replacement wall using these gravity retaining blocks. The advantage to these is that construction can be completed in-house by municipal staff, eliminating the need for masonry contractors. Provides a modern engineered retaining wall design for long-term structural performance. So these typically provide a design life exceeding 50 years and minimize ongoing maintenance and easy to repair if damaged. The disadvantage to this option, of course, is that the existing stone wall, as we see it today, would not be preserved. For option 2, which is the rehabilitation of the wall, which we had looked at last year, would see us issuing new procurement, seeking qualified contractors with expertise in stone masonry to dismantle, reconstruct, and stabilize the existing wall using the salvaged stone materials. Of course, the advantages, opposite to what we just talked about, preserves the existing historic appearance and character of the wall, reuses the salvaged stone materials where feasible to maintain the traditional appearance. The disadvantages to this is that it would require specialized expertise not available within our municipal staffing resources. Construction costs, as we've seen last year, are likely to be outside of the allocated budget. There is also limited contractor availability, which may further impact our procurement outcomes. This project would also take longer to be reconstructed back this way and would require far more ongoing maintenance. And based on the last time this wall was rebuilt, which was in the 90s, I believe, the late 90s, we can expect to see a 25 to 30 year design life for that replacement if we rebuild the wall using the existing materials. So staff are seeking direction for how council would like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chetwin. Questions? Questions on the report as presented, council? Councilor Wenzel?
If we went with the first option, putting in the gravity stones and whatever, what becomes of the old stone that we tear out? Is it possible to save that, or it's...
Certainly, good question. So anytime that we've kind of encountered things like that around town, we do try to save them. You're never sure when you're going to encounter something that you may need 1 or 2 pieces of stone to patch into something. For example, there was some sections of Main Street that had granite curb along them, so we still have pieces of that at the shop that we can reuse if necessary in the future.
Other questions, council? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. In figure 2 versus figure 3, one looks like it has a more vintage vibe than the other. So I'm just wondering what we would expect. Would we expect it to look like the first photo or the second photo?
Certainly, good question. So the stone that we have available, or that's readily available for a project like this in the area, is from figure 2. Figure 3, it was very difficult to find something that showed kind of how the steps would look with the split face block. So the coloring would match the first picture, but the steps, I guess, in design or aesthetic as far as how the face of them and things look would be similar to figure 3.
Any other questions, council? I was just going to ask, so with respect to the expected significant construction costs associated with option 2 to rehabilitate it using the existing stones. So we said 3 times the budget, and I mean in the report, so 3 times the budget when we had gone out and asked for it. Do you know how much that was, like what it was quoted at, what the actual expected cost would be?
I don't have that rate on hand, but it would be a similar, so the, I guess what we would be asking is a similar thing that we asked for last year, which was, I guess what we talked about, which is dismantling the wall, saving the stones, making sure everything's chipped away from them, and reinstating that wall from the ground up with a good footing and drainage system behind it.
Right.
So that's where the, I know that the budget increased slightly this year, but we're a little later in the season too, so that can have impacts with this type of specialty work already being, I guess, the resources throughout the community being allocated for the year.
So I'm looking in the staff report, 3 times the budgetary estimate of 101,780. So over 300,000 would have been the quotes that we obtained at that time, versus we think that it could be achieved in-house around 173,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're, from a cost estimate perspective, we're looking at option 1 costing around 173, option 2 costing around 300K. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilor Jenkins.
Did you get a estimate from a contractor for replacing the wall with the stack stones, or was it just to redo it the way it was?
So the procurement that we did last year was for replacement using the existing stones. We did not do our procurement using the gravity blocks because we feel we can, it's a project that's manageable in-house with staff.
I think it would have been prudent to get an estimate from a contractor for doing it the first way, instead of just relying on a guess that staff can do it for 173,000.
Other questions? I'm not sure, Councilor Jenkins, do you want to, would you like to look for a motion to direct staff in that way? I know that there's some complexities with respect to our unionized environment in terms of when we have the capacity and expertise and ability to do stuff in-house. Like, I'm not sure exactly the CAO Thorpe, I'm not sure if there's any, are there sensitivities there that we need to navigate in terms of available capital project staff to execute? Like, that's not clear to me when we actually have the opportunity to go out versus to use internal resources to achieve or to accomplish a capital project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, if we have capacity in-house to do that work, and if that's work normally performed by the bargaining unit, there could be an argument there that it would be best suited for internal resources to conduct that work, but staff are happy to go away if council wishes to confirm.
Right, so that wouldn't, we could still ask the question, seek bids, identify what the projected cost would be to explore option 1 using a third party, but that wouldn't necessarily mean that we would go the route of using a third party, is that right?
That's correct. So, municipality is always welcome to seek bids or follow the public procurement process, seek quotes, that type of thing at any time, regardless of who ends up doing the work.
Right.
There's nothing precluding us from seeking any bid at any time, of course.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay. Any other questions for Garrett? Okay, is there a motion at this time? Go ahead, Councilor Jenkins.
I would like to make a motion that the Council for the Region of Queens direct staff to get a quote or put an RFP out for having this done by a contractor with the gravity retaining wall system to just to verify costs and maybe possibly save money. Thank you.
And perhaps a friendly amendment to that, and then come back and then return to council with options? Yes. Yeah, okay. Is there a second to the motion? Councilor Fancy? I'll go with Fancy, it was simultaneous there. We'll say it's seconded by Councilor Fancy. Is there further debate or discussion on this item? Go ahead, Councilor Carver.
So within that option, that'll come back that maybe the staff can still do it.
Yep.
Yep.
Further discussion? Deputy Mayor?
I understand the concern for cost certainty with some of our projects, but I just think of the recent infrastructure project we just contracted out, and it was because we had capacity issues within our internal staff, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was one of the items that was on there. And so when we talked about whether we were going forward with the Waterloo project with Dexter's, for example, or one of the option was to go back and have our staff do it in-house, some of these projects would have had to come off of our staff's plate to be able to accommodate some of this other stuff. And so we contracted that project out so that we could have internal capacity on some projects. So I'm not sure I'm supportive of it, recognizing that it will come back and it's not us making a decision today. For me, I don't have clarity on the current projects that are being worked on, and I think we only just brought, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of our seasonal capital works crew back, and so, no? Could you clarify that? I see you shaking your head, sorry.
So right now, we just have our public works staff, our staff capacity at this point for projects like this.
Okay. No, that's what I'm hearing. So I think though, what the deputy, so as part of the analysis in terms of the options that are brought back, understanding the impact to our internal resources and internal capacity to achieve the work that's contained within the CIP is going to be important, an important consideration as part of those options that are brought back. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me right now, I don't have a clear understanding, and I thought once we had the manager of capital works in place that the folks that we were waiting for to come back were coming back, and so I guess it's not clear to me what kind of capacity we have with that answer to that question. So I do think we need clarity about that, so if that includes that, then I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Okay. Further debate or discussion on the motion that's on the floor? Councilor Jenkins?
The biggest problem I have is that trust in what the value or the cost of a project budget from staff is, that trying to keep cost certainty in line. We've had multiple times where we've had projects that have gone in at one price, and then we have an unbudgeted expense to cover all the extras. So my main concern is, if I knew for sure that it was going to be 173,440, that I wouldn't even think about going outside. But we need to trust the fact that it could be $150,000, which is a 20% savings. That's where I'm concerned about just having it left in the hands of the staff to do it.
Right. Any other comments? Yeah, what I'm hearing from the council is that there's an interest to ensure that that there's good stewardship of the public purse, that we have cost certainty and cost controls, and that we're deploying our internal resources most efficiently to achieve the various capital projects we've identified as priorities. So I think that's fair, and I think it would behoove us to be able to understand where we're best suited to deploy internal resources versus shopping out with those cost comparisons in hand. So I think it's a good approach. Is there anybody else who'd like to contribute to the discussion before I ask the question? Councilor Jenkins?
I do worry that if we put this out for tender and it comes back at less, that we still might decide that it's not enough of a savings and we go with the region staff doing it. We start doing that, and then we won't have anybody bidding on anything because it'll get turned down.
So yeah, so I'm wondering there in terms of reputational risk and sort of not acting in good faith and undermining the confidence of third-party vendors who would bid on our work. CAO Thorpe, is there an ability before actually constructing a tender to go and seek rough estimates from some of those third party, and yeah, I think that there might be a middle ground there where you can just say we're just wondering about a cost estimate as opposed to requiring a vendor to go through the more onerous process of actually submitting a tender or RFP document. Or
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. So staff would be pleased to reach out to prospective contractors for information without undertaking a complete RFP or public procurement process. Yes, we're happy to do that.
It was just less onerous on staff resources and less onerous for those potential vendors.
Correct. And then we can also ensure we're retaining solid relationships with those prospective contractors in future as well.
Right.
So if that's the route that I think is the best one to take, I'd like to withdraw my motion and give the staff time to contact,
I think your motion would stimulate the staff to do
Oh,
exactly what you're
okay.
expecting. That's what I'm thinking here, yeah. So,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Of course, it's within your rights to withdraw the motion at any time, but I think you're getting what you came for there, Councillor Jenkins. Okay, anything further? Okay. All those in favor? The motion's carried. Thank you, Garrett. Next staff report is on the water conservation and storage program, as well as the initial results from the pilot program. And we have Director Henhofer joining us today. Take it away, Angela.
Thank you. So I'm just going to provide an update, a summary of the pilot project, and looking for council's direction on if we're proceeding with phase 2, either this year or next year, and how it might be delivered. So some of the data that we provided and the results, we sold out within 28 hours. So it demonstrated strong resident demand. Approximately 162 households were affected and received barrels or totes, and 27% of those were low income. The funds were fully subscribed at the beginning when we ended the program, and an update from what was in the report, we're currently sitting at approximately $39,000. And the reason why it's gone down is we've done multiple reviews on duplicate orders, making sure that we align with what the program was intended to, that people were receiving what and ordered what they were eligible for. So we're down at approximately $39,000. And just going to be finalizing and reconciling in the next few days with Rain Barrel. We've had multiple, I think there's going to be a total of 3 truckloads, one of which has already completely been delivered. We're working into the second one today and tomorrow, and then trying to finish it by the end of this week, just as a slight update. So when we complete the final reconciliation, we're probably going to be at about $10,000 to $12,000 that's left into the pot from the first phase 1. So if we look at the data itself, we had participation from all of the districts, and that would be on page 46, the next one, Steve, if you don't mind. And it definitely exceeded, the demand definitely exceeded the available funding. So it was definitely something that residents really took interest in. And some of the data provides us a good understanding with regard to where the demand exists, that there actually is some demand. There was participation by all districts, and there was also some low-income participation from residents who were already part of the program as well as new into the exempt program. So that was a great initiative at that perspective. And then how we want to move forward. So we've got options, and the one that I presented was, well, we've presented 3. The approach that I'm going for is to work solely with low income and take it so that we can go out into all of the districts and sign up either people who are part of the low-income program and or are part of the exemption but aren't actually within the municipal infrastructure at this point. And another option would be to work solely with the rain barrels and not the totes this time. The totes are very difficult to source. This was the first time that they actually sourced outside of Ontario, and we took a lot of them. If we source locally, they're over $150 more plus delivery than the price that we got. So a potential change to that would be just focusing on rain barrels and potentially increasing it to 3 rather than 2 as the maximum household. So we've got some options with regard to that, and how we want to roll that out. If we did something like that, we would be able to stretch the money further for more households because the totes did cost significantly more than the barrels did. So when it comes to the funding, looking for council's direction for a phase 2, whether we proceed this fiscal year, allocate some funds for next fiscal, what's the preferred funding source, what you're wishing to allocate, and any preferred registration if it's solely to low income and then to the others. So open for discussion.
Oh, thanks very much for the report, for the data, and for the initial pilot rollout. I think we're victims of our own success and how quick the uptake is. But clearly, a pilot project is to gauge uptake, and we got a pretty loud and clear message around the amount of demand for a program like this. So I applaud staff's involvement and work on this. Council, questions or to clarify the staff report or the options as presented? Councillor Carver?
Hi. Thank you. Did you have a lot of low-income households call after the last program, after the barrels had sold out?
We didn't track any of that after it was closed. We just simply advised people that it was closed and that we would take coming back to council in July.
And also, did you say there was a grant money for the well loan program? Is there grant money for the well loan program?
Yes, when we originally came to council, there was $250,000 in the surplus. So we had originally allocated $50,000 for the initial, which was the $50,000 a year. We allocated $100,000 for the community well program and $100,000 for the well loan program.
I think as well, we are, just further to that, we are going after the Sustainable Communities Grant Fund, Challenge Fund, I believe it's called. We're trying, I believe the intent from council at a previous meeting was to go after those funds, to allocate more funds to be able to put towards that well loan program, recognizing that 100,000 would only do a few wells. So maybe that's what Councillor Carver was getting at. Just on that, it says here that $33,000 would be allocated, and so that would be coming out of that 100,000 that's earmarked. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's one of the options, or we have to find funds elsewhere. So with regard to the grant, if I can just touch on that, we have not actually applied for it. We had discussions internally, and it would appear that we need to have a feasibility study for the community well loan program. So, or sorry, the community well program. So if council's intent, which I believe that we understood that we were trying to roll that out this year, if we need to do a feasibility study, we wouldn't be able to get the funds until next year and roll the well loan program out.
So sorry, just to confirm, we don't believe that we'll be able to access grant funding to support any of the mechanisms of the rural water program for this year?
That's correct. We were going to be looking at the $100,000 to work on the 4 community wells based on that $100,000, and that I believe the community, this Sustainable Community Fund was going to be looked at for other projects within the municipality.
Okay. Any other questions, council? So my understanding is that from a timeliness perspective, we had the most agility or ability to get the first kind of pillar of this, which was the rain barrels and totes out the door. The second, sorry, could you just elaborate in terms of the feasibility study? Are we envisioning that we are going to be able to have some of those community wells stood up for water filling and for additional access points this year?
That would be the goal. I can give you an update on that. I have reached out to the 4 locations that we have considered. I have received response back from 1 as to what their requirements are. I have received expression of interest from the other 3, but no details as to what is required for each of the sites. Okay. We do know that each site will be completely different based upon their needs. So until I actually have response back from the other 3, we won't be able to move forward. But very much considering that we are looking forward to that, given response back as well as going through the process of contractors.
All right, and then the third pillar of this program, just requiring a little bit more time and for our finance department to weigh in terms of how we would roll out the mechanism around the loan program. Is that right?
Yeah, the well loan program we need to go through bylaw. So Mr. Wilson had presented, I think, in May, and it would need to go through first and second reading for the bylaw before anything else proceeds from that perspective.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just for clarity, is it staff's intent to come back to ask for direction from council regarding a feasibility study? I understand that it doesn't make sense that you would be able to achieve those grant funds this year to roll a well loan program, but I'm just wondering if it's coming to council to support that feasibility study or what that really looks like, because in my mind, I think if we go through the bylaw for the well loan program and only have $100,000 earmarked, people are just going to be disappointed because you could get 3 to 4 people on it, and then we have no other funds. So, and recognizing that once something like that is established, it's my understanding that it prohibits us from being able to go after a grant because it's already in the works. So I'm just wondering if you could clarify if staff are coming back just around that feasibility study, because I think we need to really be able to leverage grant funds to be able to make that program worthwhile.
I'm actually not aware, unfortunately. I don't know if there was an intent for that. I think that we were taking the last motion to say move forward on the community wells, and if we can apply for the grant, then we would. If council wishes us to adjust, we're happy to do so.
Sorry, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'm just suggesting, I think that we need to follow back up with staff. Like, we need to update to have a better understanding of what council would require staff to do. I don't know if CEO Thorpe wants to jump in here, but I don't feel like I have enough information to really comment, except for to ask for more information.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, nothing else to add that hasn't been reviewed at this point. So if there's additional clarity that council's seeking from previous direction or motions that have been tabled previously, we're happy to adjust.
I think that my understanding in the previous motion and discussion of the staff on this program, recognizing that it is a pilot program, so we're not going to be able to provide to meet the entirety of the demand for the community. So I think we need to be realistic about that. But I think my understanding of the will of council is to get as much of this implemented in as timely fashion as possible, while also looking to leverage and take advantage of the various grant programs that exist around climate resilience and water security and whatnot, so as to try to amplify the impact that we can have, while recognizing that we're constrained and limited to the amount of resources that we can allocate from the municipal budget to achieve this work. So I think that that's really, and I think my understanding is that council would be open to whatever sort of agility or flexibility or what makes sense in terms of reallocating money from one side of the program to the other, or but I think what Deputy Mayor is pointing to is us being deliberate about the sequence of things and the timeline, that there's constraints to accessing grant funds. So sometimes you have to take it far enough to be eligible for granting, and sometimes you've taken it too far and then you preclude yourself or exclude yourself from eligibility because there's already, you've already broken ground on a project which required, there's these, and it's challenging, but to thread that needle between a shovel-ready project versus a project that's already been initiated, and therefore you're not able to access the funds because you've already spent the money. Be getting creative, I think, and our approach to make sure that we're not finding ourselves in a position where we can't take advantage of the funds that exist from foundations or other orders of government or what have you. But my understanding of the recommendation here today would be to reallocate, and so my understanding too, based on your update, Angela, is that of the 50,000, there's still 11 grand of it because we've actually found duplicate orders or ineligibility or something. So there's 11,000 that's available. Your recommendation would be to siphon another 33 over from the allocation, the initial allocation for the grant well program over, which would put us in a position where we're at 44,000 of additional funds available this year, and then roll and allocate that money for rain barrels, which is from what I'm hearing from you, is more, we'll be able to cast a broader net if we just go the rain barrel route, because it's better cost per unit than the water barrels. So to reach as many households as possible with the available resources for this year. Is that a fair characterization of your recommendation here?
Yes, that's correct. And the other option is to wait and we embed it into the budget and do a phase 2 next year. So it's
Right.
just the will of council.
Right. Further questions? No? Okay, thanks. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Fancio.
With the rain barrels, I think it's a great program, but the only thing is I did notice, like, I know up my way in particular, I think of one person in particular who, they live right by crossing the river, and they were always running a line across the river to try to get water in to fill up their barrels. And I went and talked to them. I said, do you know anything about this program? No, I don't. Because they haven't been to any information sessions. They haven't, they don't look online. So it's to get it out to some of these people that have a great need, but don't have access to things like this and miss out on the program.
Yes, because it was fully subscribed within 28 hours, it was hard to do the other information sessions. We can see based on the stats that multiple people knew about the program, because from all districts people were applying or coming into the office for it. If we worked on the low income, we would be able to slow the program down a bit. We did have it in multiple sources. We had it in the newspaper, we had it on social media as well as websites, so we tried targeting all of the areas that we could. We would also be working, if we slowed it down to just low income, with senior safety to be able to provide some flyers and try to do it on a longer lead in, noting also that if we work solely with the low income, we also have to provide them some time to be able to provide their notice assessment so that they can meet the criteria based on the policy that we currently have in existence for the low income program. And we have previously identified that the goal was to be able to have information sessions. However, it was fully subscribed earlier. This might be able to take that and be able to provide some more residents with paper copies of things. I don't anticipate that we would do flyers or anything like that across, but we would be able to do it in, whatever means that we can to present the information to residents.
And so just to clarify, option 1 and the recommended option, it wouldn't make this program solely available for low-income households. It would prioritize and provide a 3-week period where the registration would only be available for low-income residents, and then after which, if there's still remaining resources or stock of rain barrels left, then it would open up to general registration.
Yes,
right?
that's
Yeah.
correct. I do anticipate, though, dependent upon the amount of funds, that
Yeah.
if we really are trying to work with the 5,000 residents that are part of the low-income program, that we would probably have some good uptick on that.
Right, and potentially could exhaust those resources before opening up to broader registration.
Very possible.
Right, okay,
However, if it's not, then we would roll it out.
Sure. Thank you.
And just for clarity, this won't be open for uptake before the public sessions? Like, there's a different spin on this time than the previous, is that correct?
Yes, I think based on what we experienced for the first ones, I try to look at some lessons and things that were identified, and I think it would be a much slower rollout. It would be solely focusing and doing pre-education for over a week to let people know. We would then be doing information sessions. Individuals can register right there if they bring their notice assessment. We would still have the list of individuals who are already on the low-income registry, and if not, we have the ability to take that information. We would try to avoid having people coming into the office so that we can just focus it at the information sessions. However, also recognizing that it might not work for everybody, but we would not be opening it up straight away online because it just goes too quickly, and then it takes a lot of staff time to do a lot of the verification after the fact.
Great, thanks. Any other questions, Council? Councilor Merrill?
I'm just wondering what kind of timeline for all this and for delivery of the rain barrels in the second phase?
So delivery of the existing ones are over half complete. When we would roll this out would be direction of council. I would need to still speak to a vendor or a new vendor to be able to work through this. And then it would be opening it, advertising, doing information sessions, leaving it open for 3 weeks for the low income. If it needs to be extended further, we would open it up to all residents. And once that's complete and or we're sold out of the funds, we would then start delivery. Very similar to this one.
Any other questions? No? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion. Does a member of council would like to make a motion? Go ahead.
I move that council direct staff to proceed with Phase 2 of the Water Conservation and Storage Program during the 2026-2027 fiscal year, and that Phase 2 of the Water Conservation and Storage Program focus for an initial period ending 3 weeks after commencement on in-person registration sessions for low-income residents in West Queens and North Queens, including the Caledonia and Greenfield areas, and that thereafter, if funds remain in the program be open to all eligible Region of Queens Municipality residents under funds until funds are exhausted, and that $33,000 from the Region of Queens Rural Water Initiative be allocated to fund Phase 2 of the Water Conservation and Storage Program.
Second? Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Romero. Further discussion?
May I just add a
Yeah,
comment?
Deputy Mayor, you, as the mover, you can speak to it first.
Thank you. So
Absolutely.
happy to support this. I think it makes sense to expand upon this. Will everyone get it in an ideal time frame this summer? No. Will they have it ahead of next summer? Yes. I think that's valuable. Just also noting, I didn't want to add it into this. It's already a long motion, but I will be adding a separate motion just around the feasibility study with the well loan program. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion or debate? Anything further? Is anybody against the motion? Would like to argue against the motion? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? That motion's carried. And then Deputy Mayor, sorry, and just my understanding was that the feasibility study was about the community well program, not the well loan program. Is that right? Which the feasibility or study would be required for the community well program or the well loan program?
Community
community
well
well
loan
program,
program, correct.
Sorry, so I'm confused because I thought we were applying for the Sustainable Communities Fund to leverage more funds for the well loan program so that we had more residents who could potentially get a drilled well through the loan program beyond the 3 to 4 that would fall under that $100,000 allocation we had. So now I'm lost. Sorry.
My understanding from internal discussions was that we can't receive funds through a grant that would be utilized from a loan program to residents. And so if we were to do the feasibility study for the community well and we received funds, we would then reallocate part of the funds that was in the community well back into the loan program, just because of how the MGA is written, that we can't receive funds to then give out a loan.
Because we were receiving those funds back.
Yeah.
Noted. Okay, that makes more sense. Just wondering maybe if council could get an update, obviously not right now, about what potential projects we have that we suspect we could access the Sustainable Communities Fund from. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and to be fair to Angela, that's more Alex's lane than Angela's. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So are you okay then? Okay. Thanks very much, Angela. I want to highlight the fact that this is I know that there was some frustration for folks that wanted to take advantage of this program and weren't able to in the first phase. But I think that this is a really this is an appropriate way of going about it, and that a pilot project is intended to test the waters, mind the pun. And I think we need to do more of this, and I just appreciate the agility of the staff to test it out, come back with some data on uptake, and come up with some solutions, some agility and solutions to then roll out a second wave of this. I think that this is my expectation of how we should advance this types of programs when we're trying to meet needs in the community. So I appreciate the work on this file, and for your sort of for your solutions oriented approach here. And I'll be glad to see another wave of rain barrels going out the door, because folks have been very the people who have been able to take advantage of the project have been very grateful, and I've been receiving really great feedback on the program. So I thank you for your work on it. Thanks. Sure. I'm going to call for a brief recess here. If we could reconvene at 10:15, please, and thank you. All right, folks, if you could please find your seat, we're going to get going again here. Yeah. Yes, the deputy mayor wants me to note that it's actually 7 minute, but it was a 7-minute break, not a 5-minute break, so we'll continue to learn. 7.3 is a request over $10,000 for the Community Investment Fund, and I believe we have our Community Economic Development Officer Lynette here to provide us with an overview of that report. Take it away, Lynette.
Perfect. Good morning, Council. Yes, I'm here today to recommend that Council grant the Brooklyn Recreation Committee $25,000 for eligible capital upgrades from the Community Investment Fund. So the Brooklyn Recreation Committee has requested assistance for capital upgrade expenses at the club to assist with improved safety, accessibility, and code compliance. They wish at the Brooklyn Community Hall to replace the exterior ramp, which is deteriorating, and at the base of the ramp there is uneven surface, which is creating a tripping hazard. Okay, so this replacement of the ramp will address structural concerns, safety hazards, and comply with modern accessibility standards in the National Building Code. Additionally, the hall will complete an entire renovation of the bathroom to create a barrier-free washroom. This here will improve equitable access and better serve community members, providing increased dignity, independence, and inclusion. The total projected eligible expenses are $53,150, and the total funding request is $25,000. They were able to request up to 50% of their total eligible expenses, as this is an existing structure that we're looking to do a capital update to. So Council budgeted $275,000 for the Community Investment Fund in the 26-27 fiscal year, and at the time of the writing of this report, $178,589.25 has been committed, with a balance of $96,410.75 available. All right. So the options that are before you today are that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality provide a grant to the Brooklyn Recreation Committee for eligible capital upgrade expenses in the amount of $25,000 from the 26-27 Community Investment Fund. Your second option, sorry, 1 second. Now I got my pages out of order. There we go. Is that you could provide, the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality provide a grant to the Brooklyn Recreation Committee for eligible capital upgrade expenses in an amount less than the requested $25,000 from the 26-27 Capital Investment Fund. Or the third option is that the Council for the Region of Queens Municipality decline to provide a grant at this time for this project. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lynette, for your report. Council, any questions on the report as presented?
I'd just like
Councilor Watson?
to make a comment or two. The work that the Brooklyn Rec Committee has done over the past few years has been fantastic. I've had to use the hall a few times, and the comment I'd like to say, though, is that Brooklyn has an area rate for the Recreation Committee. I believe it's 3 cents. Are we going to get a backlash now? They pay an area rate, we give them a grant. You guys remember what we went through just establishing that they could have a rate? Does this provide an obstacle by them having their own area rate does this provide an obstacle to us legally?
So I think my understanding of your question, Councillor Wenzel, is the fact that Brooklyn Recreation receives core funding as part of an area rate preclude them from being able to access grants through the Community Investment Fund. Is that right? Yeah. I don't know, staff, do you want to speak to that right now? Are you prepared to speak to that right now?
I cannot see anything, having reviewed Policy 11, that would preclude them from applying. I did read through this policy prior to coming here, and I'm holding it in my hands right now. And there is nothing that I can see within the policy that would in any way bar them from accessing these funds.
Any other insights? I have an insight myself in that. So there is part of the Community Investment Fund talks about eligible organizations, and that an organization cannot receive beyond a certain percentage of their operating expenses from from other government. There is language in there. We did have this earlier in this term. This was reviewed, and it was that the area rate money is community money. And it is not legally, it's not considered, it's not as if the Brooklyn Recreation was receiving tax revenue from the Region of Queens Municipality or like the public purse from the federal government or the provincial government. If they were, then it would meet the criteria and they'd be excluded from the program, which had, my understanding, been a practice in the past where Brooklyn Rec and the Cemetery Committee could not take advantage of the Community Investment Fund because of the interpretation of that provision, but we did seek clarity on that, and it was determined that the money that's collected through the area rate is community money, and the Region of Queens Municipality is just functioning as an intermediary and collecting that area rate and then redistributing it to the organization. That doesn't count. That's handled differently or legally perceived differently than if we're collecting money through general taxation and then part of consolidated revenue and then allocating as funding in our operating so it's different. We're just siphoning money through and acting as an intermediary to collect and then redistribute the area rate. So those area rate funds are not considered in a way that would preclude them based on the provisions of the Community Investment Fund eligibility criteria. That's my understanding of it. Yeah? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
And I do believe that we've already allocated funds to the Brooklyn Rec under the Community Investment Fund, which would have been, I think, sometime last year.
We did do it. We did it last year as well. Yeah, we did. And oh, it didn't blow up. Maybe it'll blow up this time, Councillor Wenzel. We'll see. Any other questions on this one, Councillor Jenkins?
Considering that the request is for accessibility, safety, and better access, whatnot, to their building, I think we have no other choice but to grant their request. Coming from a fire department that has just gone through a major overhaul, and the accessibility improvements done to our hall has improved the access so much that we're getting comments from people, the safety, they feel safer coming into the building. And I think Brooklyn, they need that as well. So I'm fully in favor of this request.
It sounds like you're ready to make a motion, Councillor Jenkins, are you? Okay, Councillor Miro.
I'd just like to add that, yes, Brooklyn does need this. For the accessibility end, the ramp has been in hard shape for a few years now. The pillars are also rotten in the front as well, and need structural improvement there. So I would like to make this motion, please. I move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality approve a grant to the Brooklyn Recreation Committee for eligible capital upgrade expenses in an amount of $25,000 from the 2026-2027 Community Investment Fund in accordance with the Community Investment Fund policy, and that the grant be conditional upon the Brooklyn Recreation Committee providing proof of eligible expenditures to the satisfaction of staff prior to this disbursement of funds.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Jenkins. Further debate, discussion, comments on this one? No? I think I just want to echo what Councillor Jenkins was saying there. I think this is really well aligned to our priorities as a council, and just applaud the Brooklyn Rec Committee as a group of volunteers who end up doing a lot of the work that would otherwise fall to the municipality as sort of core operational responsibilities and infrastructure, and so applaud them for all of their efforts and the great programming that they've been doing and the upgrades to their facilities that they've been undertaking. So I'm very pleased to see this. Anything further? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Lynette. Okay, 7.4 is the council implementation report. As always, very much appreciate this one. The municipal clerk prepares this in advance and is happy to, while she assembles this, she's not responsible for any of the actual motions or implementation of the motions of council, but she's always pleased to capture any questions or feedback or concerns or clarification that any members of council would like to ask for, and then she can follow up after the case with the relevant department within the organization. So are there any questions, concerns, clarification anyone's looking to seek here? Councilor Fancy?
Just because I've had a couple phone calls to me about with the dog bylaw number 3, which is put out in October 28th, 25, and it's in progress. Just wondered where we are in progress.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, if you could get an update to members of council on the timeline for the dog bylaw. I know go ahead, CAO.
Mr. Mayor, just in reference on page 69 of your agenda package,
Yeah.
the next step will be at the August 11th meeting. The draft bylaw will come to council.
Oh, okay. Draft bylaw is expected at the next meeting of council.
To be introduced, yes.
Okay,
that's correct.
thank you. Other questions? Yeah. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I know there's a item that Councillor Wenzel will be speaking to a little later in the meeting, but in going back and looking at the council implementation report, I think we just lost sight of a particular motion. And the motion that I'm looking for would have came out of our chat about the capital investment plan when it was presented to us about the additional water work that was coming in 27, 2028, 29, 30, like in the 5-year capital plan. And I'm just looking back at the January 13th meeting minutes, and it just references there was a particular motion that the Council Region of Queens Municipality directs staff to procure third-party services to undertake a project analysis for the transmission main project, including consideration of cost, timeline, and other impacts on the transmission main project. So we were talking about options to come back about how we could advance that work and what some of that stuff looked like. And I can't find it on the council implementation report, so I think maybe we just lost sight of it. So I just wanted to flag it, and I won't speak further on this because I know Councillor Wenzel plans to under council business, but just regarding the council implementation report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anything else? Any other feedback on the council implementation report? Okay, I'll look for a motion to receive it as information. Moved by Councilor Jenkins, seconded by Councilor Carver. Oh, look at that! We got our handy dandy new camera up and rolling for when we make motions and vote. Like it. Thanks, Steve. Any debate before I call the question? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, that concludes staff reports. Take us over to bylaws and policies. So we have the second and final reading of bylaw 29 on the accommodation levy before us. So the bylaw 29 is a bylaw respecting collection of fees under an accommodation levy. It's now before council for a second and final reading. Yeah, Mr. Lane, do you want to come up and just give an overview of, just a high-level overview of this item, given that it's a second reading? I'm assuming there's nothing substantive different from what we saw in the first reading.
Thank you. Good morning. Yes, so there's no new information contained in the report to accompany the second reading of the bylaw. Just a couple of points to highlight. Just as a recap, Council directed staff in January of this year to draft the bylaw, which was brought back at the end of April, and some changes were requested to that. It then came back for first reading in early June, and we're now at the point of second reading. So as before, within the bylaw, there are a couple of things just to point out that weren't included. The first one is the fact that it's a one-off situation, which is that bookings made but not paid until after the effective date of the bylaw needs to be dealt with. So rather than dealing with that within the bylaw, given that it's a one-off situation, just to make sure that council is okay with the idea that if bookings were made and paid for before the effective date of the bylaw, then those would not incur a levy. Bookings made but not paid for until after the effective date would. If I said that the right way around. I haven't included specific clauses to deal with the situation where platform operators, so that would be the likes of Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, and so on, the situation where they would collect levy on behalf of the accommodation and then remit it to the municipality. This is a direction which is hoped will come about at some point in the future, but we're not there yet. So that at some point, this bylaw may need to come back to council for revision. That we're not creating a separate and independent registry of accommodations within the municipality. We're relying on the provincial registration list of accommodations, of which stood this morning at 159 registered accommodations in Queen's County. Nor have I put any specific clauses within here to deal with the disbursement of funds. We've talked about this previously, and that if council proceed with the second reading, then terms of reference of a committee would need to be developed, and that committee would be charged with looking at disbursement of funds, and the composition of that committee and so on needs to be figured out. But other than that, I'll leave it for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Any questions pertaining to the second reading of this bylaw? And so there's some there's some implementation stuff that would be required if this enjoys the will of council for a final reading, in terms of actually rolling out that committee through which we would get sector partners' involvement in determining most appropriate use of the funds, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what we really want to be doing is getting people excited by the fact that there's an amount of money available to develop the tourism sector within Queen's County. You know, what that money gets spent for is limited by the MGA. It has to go only towards tourism development, but the scope within that is fairly wide, and it will be up to a committee to look at the options and what would provide most benefit, not only for the accommodation providers, although they are the people who are gathering the money for this, but you know, how we can develop the tourism sector within Queens without relying solely on taxpayers' money to foot the bill for it.
Right, and if I'm correct, we had projected a revenue of $40,000 for this year's fiscal to be generated from an accommodations levy. And so, are we, in terms of the sequence or timeline, are we in an okay place where if this enjoys a final reading today, where we'd actually be able to implement the levy in a fashion where to be able to you know, obviously it's a little bit of a crystal ball, it's projected revenue, but to capture, you know, around that $50,000 of anticipated revenue for this fiscal year?
Sure. So the effective date that's written into the bylaw, if it was to pass council approval today, would be for implementation on October 1st.
Okay.
And so, which is obviously, you know, we're going into the fall and winter seasons for that, which would obviously affect some revenue. There's a lot of, if it passes today, there's a lot of work to do. You know, we have to put the systems in place that would allow for the collection and recording of the levy money, which has implications on the municipality, but also on the accommodation providers. And so we're going to have to work a lot with accommodation providers to make sure that this is implemented by October 1st, but also in a way that doesn't become burdensome, or at least as least burdensome as we can make it possible for the accommodation providers. The estimate for revenue generated between October and the end of the fiscal year is an estimate, but you know, if we can get this in place and reporting and collecting from all of the registered accommodations, then it should add up to, you know, a sum of money.
Right. So October 1st, if I'm counting correct, so that would be 5 months within this fiscal year that we would be able to capture with a roll at 6 months. Oh, I was thinking 5. Pardon? Oh, right. Yes. Right. Okay. So 6 months, but not our busiest 6 months.
That's right. Yeah. So
right.
it wouldn't be directly proportional to half a year's amount.
No,
Somewhat less. But the estimate was originally $250,000 per year as a very rough sort of multiplier of the number of accommodations times average room nights times and a roughly average cost of a room night. So it's certainly not an exact number, but probably within tolerance.
And we'll after we get actuals, we'll be able to adjust those budget line items to reflect our actuals from previous years. Yeah, yeah, good. Any other questions?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Give her.
Move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality give second and final reading to Bylaw 29, Accommodation Levy, pursuant to Section 75A of the Municipal Government Act, to come into effect October 1st, 2026.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Jenkins. Debate, discussion? Further debate on this one? No? Call the question then. All those in favor? Okay. Consider it.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, could you call a brief 5-minute recess before the next item?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I will call for we'll reconvene at 10:45. Okay, I'm gonna get rolling again. We got some stuff sorted out, so just find where we are here. Yes, that's right. So we have correspondence from for action from the South Shore Housing Action Coalition. So on June 21st, a letter was received from SHAC, a partnership the Region of Queens already participates in on housing and homelessness work. This is it's just a relationship check-in. It's not a funding request, but just checking in with us to see, if the direction of SHAC and the activities that they're undertaking is aligned with what the Region of Queens Municipality is looking for, inviting suggestions for improving the collaboration, offering to meet with council and designated representatives, asking to hear about our housing-related work, our loan program, our rural water initiative. So really just looking for input from our council. So just to clarify here, so both Councillor Fancy and I are involved both in the SHAC and then also sitting on the newly constructed subcommittee or working group on which is specific to Queens County and Queens County housing and homelessness challenges. So that file, because I think that it's fair to say that in the past, some of the work that SHAC has undertaken has been more focused and less representative of Queens County, with more emphasis on Lunenburg County. And so, but I appreciate the advocacy and leadership of different people who are involved with the organization to identify that element. And then I think it's well reflected in the fact that we now have a Queens-specific working group, which mandate is going to be to look specifically at Queens County, and then fold that into the broader work of SHAC. So I know in receiving this information request, it's probably challenging for other members of the committee who don't sit on SHAC to be able to articulate anything with respect to the extent to which SHAC's work is aligned or misaligned with the expectations of this organization. But I will turn it over, Councillor Fancy, as somebody else, a member of council, a representative of the Region of Queens Municipality who sits on SHAC. I'm not sure if you had any reflections or input that you wanted to share in receiving this letter.
Yes, I think that every once in a while, the SHAC every second year or so will look at and say, what are we doing? Because we're like a go-between. So where are we going in the right direction? Are we not going in the right direction? I think, as our mayor has said, I think it isn't so much to me about is where SHAC is going in the right direction. Are we going in the right direction as Queens County? Because what's our input into this? I think this newly formed group that we can be able to look at Queens County as a whole, because there's been some studies done out that Queens wasn't actually name involved in it, and so we should have been part of that. And so we've missed out on some opportunities. But there's things like, for instance, we've met with contractors before. We met with them down in Bridgewater because we're SHAC and we do it down there. We need to do that up here. Contractors meeting with them down there doesn't help us up here in Liverpool or Queens County. So we need to be able to see how we can more make it beneficial to our needs. I always think of which I brought up 3 or 4 different times, and I don't even know if I should bring it up here, but I think sometimes with rentals, sometimes we call some places that do not have substandard apartments. Some people just can't afford to bring the standards of the apartments up, but some call them some other names for the apartments because they aren't up to the standards that they should be. Is there opportunities for us to go forward to the government and say, hey, look, maybe there could be grants to bring these apartments up, but with the basis that the people who are living in the apartment stay with the same rent, so they do it over a 20-year period or something like this, so that the person who's in there who's paying over 30% of their income into a rent is now paying less because their heating bills are down and they're living in better environments. So there's ways we can go forward to the government to try to do some of these things without scaring off the renters so they shut them down and we lose more of our capacity. But I think with that being said, I think it's open here. Does anybody else who here think of things that we could be looking at through our committee to be able to see how we could be able to help our county?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm not sure if members of council have anything in terms of identifying any specific things that you think we should be advancing on the sort of home and homelessness file in Queens County that should be a topic area or a focus area that we should be looking at. I mean, some of the existing work of the shack broadly and the newly formed working group is going to be getting a better sense of exactly the profile and the challenges being felt in Queens County, so that we have better data, and we have identified some early opportunities to work with some researchers to explore some research questions about housing security, housing vulnerability, and get a sense of what those main sort of pressure points that people feel that put them in precarious situations with respect to housing security. I think that's something that we had identified in the first subcommittee or working group, Queens-specific working group, is to help us inform solutions in terms of advocacy and investments to advance the file and support and protect against housing insecurity, is to have a better understanding of exactly what it looks like in Queens. Because to Councillor Fancy's earlier comment, some of that work was done and data collected for municipalities in Lunenburg County. We don't have that same data available in Queens County, so that would certainly be a first step for us. Realizing that we're also have the community wellness strategy, which is going to have a housing security pillar element to it, and the fact that we have taken strides in terms of our collaborative work with Quinch and supportive work alongside government entities with the public housing authority, and the work with the housing trust for healthcare professionals is being undertaken. So it's not like we're not doing anything on the file, but right now, I think that it's fair to say, I'm not sure if you agree with me, Councilor Fancy, that it's fair to say that we're identifying one of the priorities is to get a better understanding of it, and with some nuance about exactly what are the critical barriers, because we know that they're complex, like access to appropriate transportation is a barrier. So sometimes there's housing stock that's available, but housing stock in areas that aren't practical for folks who need transportation to services and employment opportunities and things like that. So getting a better understanding of exactly the shape and nature of housing insecurity in Queens County being something that we're very interested in. I mean, it's my position with my limited involvement thus far is that it behooves the Region of Queens Municipality to continue participation in this partnership, and I think to continue down the course of Queens-specific focus areas is going to be really important. And then we can go back to SHAC as a broader group and with connectivity to other orders of government and engage them as a mechanism of advocacy and a mechanism to access other outside resources in support of addressing homelessness and housing security issues in Queens County. That's my sense of it. Not sure if any other input though in terms of what you think Councilor Fancy and I should be bringing back to the table. Councilor Carver?
Are they looking for property, like municipal property that we own?
No, so SHAC's role would not be the actual acquisition. It's more of an action coalition, advocacy and network. They're not like boots on the grounds doing actual. No, they're not like Quinch and they're not like Soda. It's more of an advocacy and information exchange type of an organization or entity, yeah. But other folks like Soda, the South Shore Open Doors Association, have a seat at the table, so it gives you access to some of those community-based partners and collaborators and engage them in the discussion. But the actual table that is SHAC is more about research, advocacy, information exchange, determining policy options, what are the most effective municipal levers or drivers to impact in positive ways housing security within your municipality, things like that. Anything else? I think I'm going to suggest a motion that the Council for the Region of Queens Municipality direct the mayor to respond to the South Shore Housing Action Coalition confirming the Region of Queens Municipality's continued participation in the partnership, and with a continued emphasis on Queens County based or Queens County's context, respecting housing and security.
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Roy. Any further debate or discussion on this one? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. No correspondence for information today, so any reports from in camera? No reports from in camera today. Okay, so that brings us to the mayor's report. So I have an update. I was ill last meeting, so I have a bit of a longer duration for this mayor's report, basically the last month since I provided a report about some of the activities of Office of the Mayor. Before I get going, though, I just want to recognize the passing of former Premier Dr. John Hamm. Our flags this has gone out through some of the official communications channel of the Region of Queens Municipality, but our flags will be flown at half-mast until such a time that the official memorial service for former Premier Hamm takes place. And then I'd just like to take a brief moment of silence to honor Dr. Hamm's memory and recognize his contributions as a public servant to Nova Scotia and Nova Scotians. Thank you. So just in the way of an update, couple things on the go. So June 15th, I wanted to share that the Deputy Mayor and I attended a Regional Economic Partnership Strategic Planning session. So this is council-supported funding in addition to, alongside 4 other municipalities in Lunenburg County, through the Municipal Innovation Partnership Grant, to commission a regional sort of study on a strategic approach to regional economic partnerships. So as part of that work, the consultants wanted to get the elected officials in the room, as well as senior level staff in a separate meeting, and then the economic development staff in a third meeting. So this was the elected officials meeting. The Deputy Mayor and I joined the mayors from the Municipality District of Lunenburg, the towns of Bridgewater, Lunenburg, and Mahone Bay to discuss regional partnership opportunities, and really identified in this work that labor market information, labor market intelligence is a common gap and shared concern on the South Shore. It's a common thing that we hear in terms of succession planning for existing entities, existing small and medium-sized businesses, as well as attracting in future employers, is what does our labor force look like today? What are the main pressure points or limitations in the labor force that we have? And then what's the plan for the future? What's our labor force going to look like based on the demographic trends 20 years down the road? And that being really crucial information for us to have. And we're observing that labor skills and immigration at the provincial level is very limited in what they have for LMI in comparison to a lot of other jurisdictions in Canada, provincial jurisdictions in Canada. And so that's one of the focus areas that we've identified. So really being able to access that information to make sound decisions to foster a healthy labor force on the South Shore now and into the future. We're trying to identify those initiatives that really cross county lines and cross the boundaries of municipalities, and we know that the labor force is like that. We know that there's a lot of folks who live in Queens County who work at Michelin. They know that there's a lot of people who live in Municipality District of Lunenburg who work on the waterfront in town of Lunenburg. So there's a lot of interconnectivity between our labor forces, and people commute across county lines and municipal district lines. So we have a shared interest in understanding what our common and combined labor force looks like and how we're going to have economic prosperity and economic viability with a supported workforce. So that's kind of an emerging direction from that work, and I think it's going to be important work. More to come on that. That final report is expected to come forward in September. On the next day, on June 16th, as the vice chair of the joint NSFM and Government of Nova Scotia Rural Roads Committee, I attended an all-day meeting in Halifax where we developed some practical options for how the province and municipal governments can improve our approach to funding and maintaining rural roads in Nova Scotia. So I think we know we've been in the position where we submit list of roads that are in really poor repair, that are outside of the old township of Liverpool, for cost matching with the province, but it's a $1 million program, and it's really, really inadequate to deal with the infrastructure deficits that exist on rural roads. And so that was a program that was put in place in the 90s, and it wasn't indexed. So it's never grown. It's always just been a $1 million program, and it's the province recognizes that it's inadequate. This was a pain point during a shared service negotiation with the province and got kind of put on the back burner, put in Schedule A, and now it's come back. And so the NSFM, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and the province have struck this working group, which I'm the vice chair of, and I think that we've landed in a place, and it's really landed in a place where we're developing options that are going to be meaningful amounts of funding, where we'll actually be able to have some more agency input and traction to address some of the rural roads, because we all hear from our residents concerns about the state of roads, rural roads throughout the county. So I'm really encouraged, and so we had put forward a couple options which are very different than what's been. This is not rehashing old approaches, and we just heard back the indications from executives within the Provincial Department of Public Works is that they're willing to entertain those options. So I think there's a reason for some optimism here that we can and will land in a better place, even within this, so the upcoming fiscal, be able to roll out a program that we're going to be better suited to attend to some of the crumbling infrastructure on rural roads. June 24th, I attended the adult and alt high graduation ceremony and was really honored to present the municipal bursaries and awards and celebrate the achievements of those graduates. And I want to thank Councillor Carver and Councillor Fancy, who represented the region of Queens at the North Queens School and Liverpool High at the graduation ceremonies, respectively. So thanks, folks. June 24th, we kicked off the aforementioned working group subcommittee for SHAC with a focus on housing in Queens County. Councillor Fancy contributed his time, and just pleased that Queens County has had a lack of representation on that file, and I think that working group is giving us a chance to be able to advocate for Queens specific concerns around housing. Just want to recognize the Privateer Days and July 1st celebrations, and just a big congratulations to the Privateer Days Commission for organizing what was a really great, really well-received, well-attended Privateer Days Festival. And then following the festival, the July 1st celebrations, Canada Day celebrations was also tremendous. So thanks to our staff for pulling off such a great event there. I've received a lot of, kind of an overwhelming amount of positive feedback on both events. It's encouraging to see our community come together and come alive in these moments, and I think it's an indication of the direction we're heading. So thanks for all involved in that. On July 7th, there was an information session held here in Council Chambers on the Waterloo East Phase 3 project. And so thanks to all the engaged residents who came out to learn about the final phase of that project, to voice their concerns and their frustrations with the process thus far, and to the members of our staff on the capital projects team and the subcontractors who are involved with that project. who were really well prepared for the meeting and were open to hearing the concerns of the residents and identifying approaches to help alleviate those concerns moving forward. I thought it was a constructive meeting. And then July 8th, we had the official opening and ribbon cutting ceremony for the Nova Scotia Power's EV chargers on Legion Street in downtown Liverpool. So thanks to our staff who worked on that file in collaboration with Nova Scotia Power. Having a modern generation fast chargers literally puts Liverpool on the map for EV travelers who are looking for a place to stop and charge. So it's one more reason to drive down the 103 rather than the 101 when you're landing in Yarmouth coming off the ferry, and one more reason to pull off the 103 at exit 19 when you're headed down the highway. I just want to be clear, there was no cost to the municipality for this project. It was funded completely by Nova Scotia Power. It was just the leasing of the land and the parking area and the adjacent property where the infrastructure is installed. And I think it's something that we want to see to continue the traction we have and momentum we have for having a vibrant business community downtown along Main Street in Liverpool. And then the last thing I wanted to speak about was the municipal planning strategy land use bylaw interim review that's underway. So there have been a series of community meetings that have already occurred. So there's one online on June 9th in Liverpool, on June 23rd in Caledonia, and June 25th, and just last night in Port Mattoon. There are 2 more engagement sessions happening this week. One is happening tonight at the Seaside Center in Eaglehead, and then tomorrow at the Greenfield Rec Center. There's also an online survey that you can fill out, but that closes July 19th. So you can go to speakupland.ca/Queens-plan, or if you just search in your browser or on Google and just look for the region of Queens plan update, you should be able to access that website. And the website's great because there's Q&As that are on there that have already been submitted and then answered by the planning consultants. You can also ask your own question, which will be answered there. You can access recordings of the online launch meeting, which contains a high-level overview of the whole interim review process and the priority topic areas, which include short-term rentals, livestock and agriculture, coastal protection, shoreline protection, commercial activities in residential zones, and light pollution. I just want to be clear, it's really, really important that you get engaged as part of the planning process, because the land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy, it constructs the framework through which regulations on zoning and permitted use and development in land throughout Queens County is all based in that framework. And we've identified that some of the current LUB MPS doesn't necessarily fit with the direction of council or the needs or desires of residents in Queens County. So it's important that you get out and engage constructively and please engage in a way that is advocating for what you want to see. I've heard some critical feedback online, particularly about things like light pollution or livestock, and an assumption that there's a sort of a preconceived notion that we want to move one direction or another, so limitation of livestock or something like that. It's actually the opposite, is that we identified that limitations on homesteading and livestock in Queens may be too restrictive in certain areas, and so that's why we're looking to capture and engage with a good number of people to understand what the concerns are, what the priorities are, what people want to see, so that we can construct and amend the bylaw so it fits better with our communities. So I just want to encourage engagement in the process. Get engaged. We're trying to make sure that the fit of the framework around how we construct the land use bylaw is better suited to our communities. And the only way that we can really do that is from hearing from you folks. So please engage with an open mind. The consultants and the planning advisory committee are looking for that feedback and are intending to actually amend the land use bylaw so it fits better. It's not about regulating more, it's about fitting better with our communities and the priorities within the communities. So, but with that, that's the end of my mayor's report. I'm not sure, I'd like to give an opportunity to other members of council if there's anything that you want to highlight or speak about that I didn't speak about here. Councillor Fancy?
It's more of a question, along with the roads and the paving, was there any talk about, I guess, the reclaimed paving? Is that a cheaper option? Is that going to be something that could be, because I got so many roads up in Milton in particular that haven't been paved since a generation.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. There could be some kind of a cheaper option for something that could be, if there wasn't a, you know, I guess, as being part of the program.
Yeah, so I'm reluctant to get into specifics right now, Councillor Fancy, because basically the sequence is that we worked on drafting some options for the province to consider. The province has had a favorable reaction to those to this point. The next stage is to do a broad based of some engagement with the municipal units to see what level of uptake in some of the various program options, what it would be, and to get an understanding of the nuances of how different municipal units are feeling about their rural infrastructure and what the greatest sort of priorities are. Then when we get that when this working group gets that information, they'll distill that down, whittle that down, and then actually come up with a recommendation and it's a joint working group between the NSFM and the province, but a recommendation to go to the Minister of the Department of Public Works, who would then have to take that to the table at the caucus for consideration in the next budget. So it's a little bit premature to talk about milling existing asphalt, about use of a chip seal or recycled asphalt. Like, all of those are potential solutions, but right now it's a little early in the process because I just want to manage expectations, because I know a lot of folks are asking about this. What I think is encouraging is that the working group identified some options that are going to lead to some pretty broad-based addressing where municipalities who are prepared to spend some of the municipal dollars, where there's going to be cost matching and traction to actually get a reasonable amount of work done on this crumbling infrastructure, like far above and beyond the current J-class road repair and replacement program. But what that actually looks like after the engagement with the other municipal units, and then it ultimately going to the provincial caucus for consideration, it's hard to say at this moment. Any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, I will conclude my mayor's report with that. And that brings us to committee business. So the first of which is 13.1 and the pool committee. So proposed revision to the letter of mandate was provided by the pool committee, and then a staff report was prepared by staff. And so I'm not sure in terms of staff who's going to, okay, Madam Clerk, Ms. Green, you're going to give a high-level overview of the contents of the staff report. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the Region of Queens Pool Committee has made a meaningful contribution to the planning, design, and construction phases of the South Queens Aquatic Facility, and its work throughout the project life cycle is recognized and appreciated. The committee's revised letter of mandate dated January 28, 2026 requests an extension of that mandate into the facility's inaugural year of operations with a view to transitioning to an ongoing advisory committee structure. Staff do not recommend approval of the revised mandate at this time. The committee was established as a project-specific body with a defined end date, and that purpose has been substantially fulfilled. The operational advisory functions contemplated in the revised letter of mandate are appropriately carried out by staff, and the revised mandate contains unresolved governance questions, including the reporting relationship and the rationale for expanded membership that would need to be addressed before any extension could be responsibly recommended. Council retains full authority under Section 24 of the MGA to establish an ongoing advisory committee for the aquatic facility at any future point should it determine that such a structure is warranted. Staff recommend that Council receive the revised letter of mandate for information, decline to approve its extension, and direct that the pool committee's mandate expires provided in the original terms approved November 22nd, 2022. From the earliest discussions about aquatic services in Queens County through years of design deliberations, public consultations, procurement process, and construction oversight, the committee's volunteers gave generously of their time and knowledge to ensure that this important facility reflects the needs and values of the community it will serve. Queens County is better for their efforts, and the South Queens Aquatic Facility stands as a testament to what is possible when committed residents work alongside their municipal government towards a shared goal. Staff's recommendation not to extend the mandate is in no way a reflection of the committee's performance or the value of its contributions. It's simply a recognition that the work the committee was created to do has been done and done well.
Thank you. Any questions? Council, any questions for the clerk on this report? No? There are no questions. Go ahead, Councilor Fancy.
To put in a recommendation is not at this time. We just ask some questions on the report.
Yep. Yep. Are there any questions, though, on the report? So hearing none, I will open it up for a motion. Is there a motion, Councilor Fancy?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality direct staff to dissolve the current Pool Steerage Committee with gratitude for their work and facilitate the creation of a Pool Advisory Committee with a mandate in terms of reference to return to Council for adoption at a future Council meeting.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Merrill. As the mover, do you want to speak to it, Councilor Fancy?
Okay, yes, so I guess the whole idea is when this was formed, we had originally, before our new CAO and mayor were part of, we had asked for advisory capacity, but it was rejected, and we went to this mandate, which has worked well for the last few years and to getting to where we are. As we look here, we're looking to go back into an advisory capacity, which it should have been in the first place. We're looking at, we have a CAO has a lot of experience that can be able to help in the future as we go forward. This is a new pool. I mean, this is all brand new. We don't know all the problems we're going to run into. We do not know all the things that's going to take place. But we have on our existing pool committee, which we don't know what it will be, because if we do form a new committee, we have to have all members and people all can apply back. But we have a varied amount of experience for running pools, and such as to be here for another year as an advisory capacity, I think will be, it definitely doesn't hurt. We will, our first meeting we would have is to have our clerk to be able to be there, to be able to get the terms of reference, to be able to understand what the position of each and every person is there, so we don't get into the weeds of things. You know, the other thing about being in the weeds, I say, I'd rather see people in the weeds and not participate. You know, we can make mistakes and go into the weeds, but when you have people, I've been on too many committees that are just there and not doing anything. We had a great committee that actually functioned, and I think it's a good testament of the building that's over there now and as we go forward. So I think for going forward for the next year would be just to have the expertise to be able to bring forth advising. It doesn't do anything else but advisory capacity, and to look at some other future endeavors if we wanted to bring forth as advisory. That's what my position of what I think the extension of the, not extension, but forming a new committee would be.
Thank you, Councilor Fancy. Any other thoughts on this one? Councilor Merrill?
This pool advisory committee would be about talking about the bigger picture, such as retractable covers, adding to the pool, not the day-to-day operations. And this would be like, this wouldn't just be for the South Queens pool. This would be for the North Queens pool as well. Ways we can adapt it and help it grow.
Other comments? Councilor Wenzel?
More of a question. So we have a new pool, but is it not part of Queen's Place? Is it not just like the rink is part of Queen's Place? And do we have an advisory committee for the rink, or do we have an advisory committee for Queen's Place?
We don't
Or
presently. In the,
so
in
we're
the past,
just-
there was a community board for QPEC, but not presently. No, there are no public advisory committees for any of our recreation facilities at present.
Would it make sense to have one to cover it all?
So what would your suggestion be for, actually for an advisory committee, like a recreation advisory committee, as opposed to limiting the scope to a pool advisory committee? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of the current motion on the floor, just because I think, to Councillor Wenzel's point, we're missing, like, we need to look at it overarching with Queens County, and I think this council has came forward and allocated funds for a programmer. We talked about supporting that because there are many areas, specifically out more in our rural areas, when we think Port Jolly and North Queens, and I mean, I understand that North Queens has active living and things like that, and there's certain areas that are stood up a little more than others, but we supported that because we wanted to start spreading out and offering things. So I think I certainly appreciate the pool committee's efforts, and as a previous council member, I think the previous council was just kind of frustrated. We weren't getting a lot of traction on the pool. There wasn't staff capacity at that time. The pool committee kind of developed out of that, and I can understand why they have a lot of sense of responsibility and ownership over that. But I think it makes sense, based off my understanding of what the clerk has shared about the things about staff capacities. So I think that there is an opportunity here to have a rec committee where we capture more broadly. So I would envision North Queens Active Living being at the table, which would capture the folks from North Queens and Greenfields Recreation and some resident representation and some council representation. And I think I'll put a motion forward about something, you know, for staff to maybe bring us back in terms of reference if council is favorable in that. But I think from my view, in speaking to Councillor Miro's point, she mentioned about this committee more so could be looking at enclosures. I think it is important to note that we started talking about this in the previous term of council. This council has never given direction or allocated funds for an enclosure, and so we have to consider that as well. Not suggesting that that can't happen or I'm against it or anything like that, but I think a lot of it is like we're hanging on to things from the previous term and they haven't been discussed here with this term of council. And so I think at this point it makes sense, from my view, to have that steering committee end. Because it has served its purpose and it served its purpose really well. And then on the other note, to strike a committee so that we can capture some more of this kind of community feedback from our residents. Because when I first came in 2020, there was a Queen's Place Advisory Committee. I think it had maybe 3 members of the public and a counselor and you know, a staff or 2 or something like that. It was dissolved at that time. It was, the current CAO that we had at the time just articulated that it wasn't really working the way that they thought it would, and we talked about maybe revisiting it later. It hasn't been revisited to date, to Councillor Wenzel's question. But I don't know if it really makes sense just to have a Queen's Place specific committee when, again, there's a lot of the things that are going on there that are a staff function and the responsibility of our staff. But I think if we could have people at the table that could give feedback to say, you know, I'd love to see this kind of programming at Queen's Place. You're missing this, but also you're missing it in North Queens and you're missing it. I think there's more value in that, and there are a lot of committees within this municipality, so I feel like if we're going to strike another committee, then make it a better bang for your buck, and I think our residents and everybody wins in that way.
So there's a couple ways to appreciate the feedback from all the members of council. A couple ways we could skin a cat here, in that we could look for call the question on the motion that's on the floor, or you could also, if it's of interest to the mover, to make a friendly amendment to amend the motion that's on the floor to read the creation of a recreation advisory committee, which would, I think, in the framing of that, invite in a broader mandate with respect to an advisory committee. I think this broader notion than not just pool, but Councillor Fancy, would that be something that you're interested in, or would you like to debate and call the question on the motion that's on the floor?
I hear what everyone is saying, and I understand this, but I've been asking for the last 4 or 5 years to see us to have a committee over at Queen's Place again, because the first meeting of our last council, it was dissolved. And I think there was always an opportunity for over to Queen's Place for advisory. Advisory is always great. I always think of I'm trying to think of the fellow's name there who created Microsoft, but they said, "You're a smart man." He said, "Well, I'm a smart man because I have smart people around me." The more people you have around to help and to advise, you get better traction. To have a recreation committee, I don't know if you're getting too broad of a scope, that if you don't have subcommittees off the recreation committee, then it just gets, trying to do 100 things and only do 10% of it right. I like Councillor Wenzel's idea that if it could be a recreation for Queen's Place, along with the pool out to North Queens, then you've got more centered on what the projects you want to be looked at. I don't know. It's just thoughts.
How do other people feel? Councillor Jenkins?
I would like to see it centered more on Queen's Place, because it's something that needs a little bit of polishing, and I think a advisory committee on that could help it move forward. It might muddy things a little bit doing the entire county, and I think it might be too much for one committee. So I'd be in favor of a committee for Queen's Place, but not for the entire county at this point.
Councillor Wansell?
Yeah, the more I think about it, I kind of agree with Councillor Jenkins, but I think the missing piece would be the pool in North Queens. Yeah. I think you would include that, and then Queen's Place, and all its facilities. I mean, you could talk about outside areas, providing transportation to get you to Queen's Place, people in Mill Village or Danesville or Port Jolly. But I think, going back to what Stu and Jack, Councillors Jenkins and Fancy both said, and the committee gets so big because you got a Brooklyn Recreation Committee, they'd want a seat at the table. You have different groups that would active living in North Queens. You'd have so many groups, and I don't know if you get much accomplished with that many groups. And I think the focus should be on the pools, and the rink, and the facility itself.
Any other thoughts, contributions to the discussion and debate at this time? So what I've heard is a couple things that I've heard. Interest in having a pool advisory committee, which would include North Queens. Interest in having a broad recreation advisory committee, which would take a sort of very broad, inclusive approach to having an advisory committee, or having maybe a recreation infrastructure advisory committee. So like a recreation facilities advisory committee, that framing it as which would include QPEC, which is the fitness facility, the rink, the New South Queens pool, the North Queens, so the recreation facilities that are owned and operated by the Region of Queens Municipality. So a few different options there. Go ahead, Councillor Fancy.
I wonder if we could go back to the motion, is that called a friendly motion?
Yeah, friendly amendment, yeah.
And take pull out and put QPEC and put QPEC and, what would you call it for the pools together, aquatic, and aquatics advisory. Just put QPEC and aquatic advisory committee.
Okay. So. So it's, what, recreation facility? Recreation facility. Councilor Fancy, perhaps a friendly amendment to frame it as Recreation Facility Advisory Committee? That make sense to you?
Okay, but are we then starting to get into the big picture? That's what when I'm thinking of.
Well, I don't know what other recreation facilities we own.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay, so you're using the word facility as being the operative word, okay.
Yeah, I think so. But with the friendly amendment, I think that has to be accepted by the second of the motion. Okay, okay. Deputy Mayor, you want to speak to it?
So just for clarity, the motion would remain that dissolve the current pool steerage committee and facilitate the creation of a recreation facility advisory committee. And so we're encompassing North Queens Pool and Queens Place, and there's nothing else that we're not considering with that we would own.
Staff, any red flags on that in terms of scope or? Go ahead, CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think just getting clarity, so staff are clear on what council's objective is here. So to clearly understand what council's seeking to achieve with anytime we strike a new committee, to ensure that staff are meeting council's needs.
My understanding, I'll articulate what my understanding, based on the conversations that I've had around this, is to provide a committee structure through which advice can be sought from community members, public members, and members of council. Advice can be sought and feedback with respect to the operation and programming occurring within the facilities the Region of Queens Municipality owns and operates. That's my understanding of it. But is that aligned to what people think and feel here? So, as a sounding board, as sort of a public committee sounding board to provide advisory, and provide reflections, kind of thing. You looking for anything further though in terms of clarity on that? Okay.
May I jump in
go
for a
ahead.
sec?
Yeah, of course.
Just also wanted to flag that it does end with for adoption at a future council meeting, so we're really just leaving it wide open there's no like timeline expectations.
So that would be the terms of reference would be adopted at a future council meeting. Yeah.
Right, but I guess we will need a staff report to come back with the potential draft terms of reference that council is agreeable to.
Right.
And so right now it's very vague. It just says at a future council meeting. So if there's an expectation that we want to get this up and running over the fall and winter with some potential increase to programming next summer, I think it would be important to put some kind of date on that, would be my
Madam Clerk,
opinion.
I'll recognize you.
I can make the commitment that I can bring it back to next meeting.
Okay. Okay. So maybe another friendly amendment, Councilor Fancy, for the final phrase of the motion that's on the floor to read to return to council at the next council meeting, rather than future. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that would be good, because we got to also remember that the pool committee's mandate ends a month after the opening of the pool.
Right.
So we have to have it in place if we're going to have something going forward.
Councilor Mary, you okay with that friendly amendment?
Yes, I'm fine with that. But I'd also like to, this advisory committee to look at ways that we could rectify the expenses, some of the expenses for Queen's Place, like maybe solar panels on the roof or something like that. I mean, they could also look at this scope as well, because we do have big expenses over there, and I think we need to look at ways that we can fix those.
Obviously, offset operating costs associated with the facilities. Yeah. I think that probably it will be. I think that's probably that the staff hear that whatever it should be clear in the terms of reference what the mandate and the scope of advisory topic areas we're interested in having the committee explore. Boot should be explicit, but go ahead, Madam Clerk.
That would be something that you would give to the committee, give direction to the committee to do for you after it's struck.
Right.
You would give them a specific direction of something that you want them to research and bring to council as a report, essentially.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Also, just thinking it would be helpful for council to understand what the previous mandate of the committee at Queen's Place was. Like, if we could get that background when this comes forward, so we can just see like how it was working then, and any feedback that we can get from staff, because Councilor Fancy is right. I think it was the first meeting of the new council in 2020 that had mainly all new members that did dissolve it. So I don't think there was a great understanding there looking back. So any info that could be provided, I think, would be helpful.
Further discussion? Councilor Merrill?
I just think this is wonderful, because I know this council and last council was looking at ways that we could make this facility feasible. So I think this is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Call the question. All those in favor? Approved. Or carried is the word. Carried. Okay. Pardon?
I was just wondering if were we too soon, Steve?
Oh, right, yeah, with that new camera, yeah. Okay, 13.2 is adoption of terms of reference for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And so is that, there you are. Hi, Holly. Director McLeod is going to provide us an overview of that report.
Or McConnell.
McConnell.
Whichever. You're close.
Holly, right?
Exactly. What a great lead-in. Thank you.
Sorry.
Good morning, Council. I'm here as the staff liaison for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, who is recommending Council to approve and adopt the revised terms of reference for the committee. So as a brief background, the committee purpose itself is to advise municipal council on identifying, preventing, and eliminating barriers to persons with disabilities in the municipality's programs, services, initiatives, and facilities. So the purpose for the staff report and the revised terms of reference is we've added in, we would like to implement a small grant program. We would like to relaunch the survey that took place quite a few years ago to get a feel for where the community is as far as, how they feel that we're doing as a municipality, improving the accessibility needs throughout the community. It's also to introduce the new staff liaison, which is the new Accessibility and Inclusion Coordinator. So the scope of the committee itself is reviewing and assessing all aspects of the municipality's operations between goods and services, information and communications, transportation, employment, the built environment, education and awareness. And the committee feels that the adoption of the new terms of reference with those additions in it will help us do that, and it'll help us support other organizations that are working to further the accessibility in the community.
Thank you, Director McConnell. Any questions on the staff report or the draft terms of reference as circulated? Any questions, council? No? Okay, look for a motion. Is there a motion? Very good. Councilor Roy?
I move that Council for Region of Queens Municipality approve and adopt the revised terms of reference for the Accessibility Advisory Committee as set out in Appendix A to the staff report dated June the 11th, 2026.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Merrow. Debate or discussion? Any comments? All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So, next up we have 13.3 on the Community Monitoring Committee terms of reference. So this is the landfill committee, or I think it was what it used to be, solid waste committee, so how it used to be framed. And so we have our manager of environmental services, Blake, and provide us with a brief overview here, please.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
So, good morning. I'm here today to provide a brief but critical update regarding our Solid Waste Community Monitoring Committee terms of reference. The Community Monitoring Committee is important to our operations because it is a requirement in our solid waste facilities approval to operate, as mandated by the Nova Scotia Department of Environment and Climate Change. The core function of this committee is to serve as a vital link between the community and the facility to bring forward concerns, questions, or to give feedback. So we're looking to update the 2013 Community Monitoring Committee terms of reference to update the job titles and improve how the community and council engage with the facility. Aside from modernizing the terminology, the new terms of references encourages broader, more equitable community membership. Specifically, it specifies that we have 3 separate seats on the committee for residents that should preferentially compose of 1 resident of North Queens, 1 resident of South Queens, and 1 Indigenous resident of Queens County. This helps ensure better representation of residents. Secondly, the update allows for the appointment of the mayor or councillor to the committee, which was previously restricted in the 2013 terms of reference. Furthermore, it establishes that the councillor whose district contains a solid waste facility will automatically sit on the committee. By updating these terms of reference, we ensure that our committee remains legally compliant, highly inclusive of our residents, and properly connected to council leadership. These changes cover option 1, and option 2 is to continue the committee with a 2013 version that does not include these changes, and option 3 is to provide alternative direction. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, council? I think my understanding is just to clarify when you said the automatic appointment of the councillor whose district the solid waste management facility falls under, my understanding is that is Councillor Fancy's district. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions on this one? No? Thank you. Thank you. I think it's I always wondered why we didn't have a member of council sitting on this, so I think and I appreciate the increased, being really purposive and deliberate about having those specific seats in terms of for resident representation. I think that's a good improvement here, so thank you for your work on it. Anything else before I guess I need a motion here. Is there a motion? Before I call a question on a motion that's not on the floor. Councillor Jenkins.
I'd like to make a motion that the Council for the Region of Queens Municipality adopt the revised terms of reference for the Community Monitoring Committee as attached to the staff report dated July the 2nd, 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkins. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councillor Carver. Debate or discussion? Comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Blake. Okay, the last committee update that we had is 13.4. Councillor Fancy, you're going to provide an update on South Shore Regional Library Board. Take it away.
Yes, on June 24th, I went to the AGM down in LCLC just to get a feel of what's all going on with the library and where we're going forward in the future. Some of the stats that came out was there was an increase in people visiting from 155 to 168, so the libraries are still getting visited. Digital items, they doubled the last couple of years. Of course, we're getting into modern times. And there were an increase in membership cards. So the libraries are going forward, but the finances aren't. That's the big issue. My understanding is there hasn't been an increase from the government in the last 12 years. So they're still trying to run on the same budget that they have been. So with that in mind, as we probably already heard, I think there's 5 library places up in the valley that have been shut down. So it's starting to hit home more. The bookmobile is getting older, and it's not always dependable. At different times it's broke down last year, so they couldn't get to where they need to be. So, but the good parts of it is that well, I should say the good and the bad is that they've had to change the routes. They've gone from 5 days a week to 4 days a week with the libraries. So that meant like places like Caledonia, who used to be Saturday, is now Tuesday. So because that gives them the route down through New Germany. With that, though, they've increased some of the new stops. I think out in Port Mattoon by the Liquor Commission, they've got a stop there, Port Medway, and down by the Ross Farm Museum. I think there's another one too, and I didn't get it down. So since the route in Caledonia was on Saturday morning and it's now Tuesday, it's created some, for people that are working, have a hard job getting there. We had a meeting yesterday out at the Vernier with Councillor Carver was there, and some people from the library board and others, community members, to talk about what we could do out there to be able to rectify this, to be able to, if they aren't going to be out there on Tuesday, on Saturday, how we could get books to the residents. There's some different things that's coming out of that meeting. It was a very good meeting. And I don't want to share any of that right now because it's only thoughts, but it's going to be something that will be coming back to council probably in the future to talk about how we can be able to get, so they can be able to get the books. So that's about all.
Great. Any questions for Councillor Fancy on the Social or Regional Library work? Go ahead, Councillor Miro.
In Port Medway, it was at the Rosefinch Mercantile. Just want to clarify that.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks. I'll say I just heard a news story about the branches that were slated for closure in the Annapolis Valley have been extended until September, and they're appealing to the municipalities, the various municipal units within that catchment area, to try to generate more money for the expected operating costs of those branches. But yes, there is definitely cost pressures on the library system. Yeah, and Minister Ritzie was very clear that there's not more money coming from the province in this fiscal for library funding. And we've heard from representatives of the Social Regional Library Board the pressures they have based on the available core funding for the library system. But thank you for your update. Okay. All right, that takes us to, you need a break, Councillor Wenzel? Yeah, so we only have two items of business. We only have two items of business left before, so yours, 14.1, and then the admin policy, and then we'll be going in camera. Are you okay to continue on for that? Okay. All right. So that brings us to 14.1 and a discussion, Councillor Wenzel, that you wanted to have with respect to the water infrastructure. Take it away.
Thank you. So what I'm going to discuss here is something that I brought up when I was first elected. Actually, I had a lot of talk, and I had with a lot of constituents before I was elected, and it's centered around the poor shape of the infrastructure on the west side, particularly from the bottom of Union Street to Roy Turner Drive, and how that was constantly breaking, and how we were just patching it. And now that the council before us had decided that they were going to help in a development by running water transmission lines up over Hop Toad Hill, to 2 or 3 developments up there. And then the questions started to arise, how you could possibly do that, how you could start new with new infrastructure when the old needed repaired. And I did a little research myself. I talked to people that were on this very council from 2016 to 2020, and this was constantly put off, constantly. It would come up all before our council and during our council. Oh, well, we'll put it on a 2-year plan. Oh, no, we're going to move it to a 5-year plan. And it never, ever got done. And from my point, and I'm not going to question the validity of all the excuses, but when I started asking the questions, I was convinced that with council that we could have both. We could have water up to the new development, but we could have our side fixed too. So I carried along and said, yeah, okay, sounds great. So I was told that, you know, there was project money, government money for the development, but no government money for the west side. So that we needed to have it put under one umbrella. So they had timelines. They had to go start on the new development and running it up there beforehand. And then it got included, but yet nothing was done. And then the last excuse was that it had to have approval from the URAB, which I don't understand. If it's all under one umbrella now and they have that approval, then why do we need separate approval for this end? It's starting to be very frustrating to not just me, but to the residents. When I have to look at my residents' face and come up with excuses, I'm not going to anymore. We've doubled their water utility bill. We doubled it. And that they're looking at it right now saying, well, we got it tore up down there by Cameron's Corner right now because we had a fracture and there's a leak. We've got faulty meters. We've got issues with people that their meters are 30 to 40 years old. We've had constant reports that we lose 60% or better of treated water, yet we doubled people's water bills and we're carrying on putting water up over that hill. And what, good or bad, you go up and you see the work that the contractor Dexter's Construction is doing right now. They're flying. They're way up where they should be, maybe ahead of schedule. And then people see that and they're like, well, what's going on over here? What's going on? I talked to a former foreman, a former works department engineer, a former mayor, 2 former councilors that all told me that from Roy Turner Drive to Wolf Street, the bottom of Wolf Street, is about a 4-month job. And here we are in the middle of July, and we haven't even started it yet. And when I look back at the Capital Works project, you had a little section in 2027, another little section in 2028. It's getting to be very, very frustrating. So, the west side from the bottom of Union Street to the lake is in hard shape. We know that. There's an old pipe. Some of the meters are 35 years old. You know, and I've explained how I've got to the point to agree to a lot of these things, which puts me in a position that it's not where I stood 18 months ago, but it's where I'm standing now. I'm totally behind the original position that you can't drive water up and expect to have enough volume to create pressure while your old infrastructure is constantly breaking and not being repaired. I don't want to sit in this council anymore and hear excuses. I want something progressive to take place, and that's the point I guess I'm trying to make, Your Worship. I'm just totally frustrated. I got a thick skin. I can take the heat for the votes that we've taken here, and I can support all my fellow councilors in decisions we're making, but I can't support this anymore. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Wenzel. I want to just point back to what the Deputy Mayor had identified, that there was a motion made by you, Councillor Wenzel, I believe in January, before we adopted the capital investment plan during budget deliberations, the capital side of the budget, directing staff to engage a third party to determine options for replacement and a timeline for the replacement of that old infrastructure. I'm going to highlight too that this is aligned to one of the key priorities of this council, strategic priorities of this council, to replace and repair existing and aging infrastructure. So it is something that's important. I share your frustration and the fact that we do not have a clear sense of that. The replacement of the aging water meters, I think, is something that is also important, but a separate thing that we need information from our Public Works and Infrastructure team in terms of, on the water utility side, what is the plan for gradual replacement and taking stock of what the plan is for replacement of those water meters. But I wanted to open it up for further discussion or reflections on what Councillor Wenzel has shared with us today. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Jenkins.
My biggest concern about this is that we've been told so many times different things, and every time we're told something, I've looked back and seen the cost increases because of these delays, cost increases that this county can't afford. I don't know what the solution is to it, but I'm sure somewhere there is a solution so that things are done in a timely manner and in a way that the citizens of this county and of this district here that relies on that water source will trust what they're being told by their councillor. I mean, it's unfortunately, they're told one thing with this waterworks, and unfortunately, I would think as a citizen, I wouldn't trust anything that my councillor said, because not only is he wrong with the big thing like the waterworks, how do we know he's not wrong about other things? So I think we need to get the public's trust back in what we're saying and get it done in a timely manner and no more of these delays. And if we're having delays and it's because it has to go to the URA, whatever be, then why aren't we getting our MLA involved to speed things up? If that's what she's there for, she should be able to help us deal with this instead of us trying to deal with it ourselves. We have to get a plan in place. Because in 2 years' time, when we're done, the next council is still going to be dealing with this problem, like the last council and the council before that. We can't keep dragging these things off. I've reviewed so many the infrastructure work that have been delayed so much that the costs have gone out by hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's taxpayers' money. Just ask these taxpayers to stand out in the street and start throwing their change out, because that's what it's like. Every time there's a delay, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can tell you, Queens County can't afford hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in 2 or 3 years' time, that project cost will go up another 15, 20%. And in 2 years after that, another 15, 20%. So if we don't get our house in order, then we might as well shut the door. Thank you.
Anybody else like to comment? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I appreciate the comments that are made. I think if we can just get clarification, because if my memory's correct, when we talked about that motion around the capital investment plan, we talked about how if we can start to package those, projects together, that it's more attractive when we contract it out and things like that. And of course, Dexter's is moving so fast up in Mount Pleasant, and I have heard lots of feedback from residents that they appreciate the speed at which they're moving, and they would like to see other things move at that same speed. So I think if we can get that information back that we asked for back in early January, about what kind of options we have, and also so that we can better understand the UARB part, because there's some uncertainties there, you know, because if there are big grants available at the federal level, and so if we can package it together and go after more funds in one shot, I think that makes sense as well. So I would just appreciate having clarification about all of that so that we can confidently share that with residents. Thank you.
Provide an opportunity for other members of council to speak to this. Okay, so thank you. Thanks. I hear the frustration. I share the concern with delays in the timeline, costly delays, lack of certainty, and a lack of trust that members of the council feel from the residents. Lack of trust in the handling of the capital upgrades to the infrastructure upgrades to the water utility, and so we need some better certainty. I just want to see if there's so clearly there was the existing motion that happened in January, so I'm not sure. I think the clerk had noted that as when we were discussing the implementation report, and so I'm expecting that we're going to get clarity on the progress toward executing on that motion of council from back in January, because that's part of this broader discussion. Yeah, Madam Clerk, recognize you.
I did send out an email to council. That's 100% on me. When I was building your tracker from my tracker, I must have missed it.
Okay.
So the update on it is work to begin in summer 2026.
This summer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's going to be important to get an update from the Director of Infrastructure and Public Works on the status of that motion, when we can expect an update on replacement of end of life water meters, as well as there's a third component there, which is I had in my head and I've lost it. Oh yes, and the timeline associated with the Nova Scotia Regulatory Appeals Board, the expected timeline, and to Councillor Jenkins' point, if we feel that that we're that's leading to delays that are unacceptable to our organization, that we may need to engage in advocacy with the provincial government through our MLA. And so maybe an update on the maybe just a bit of a motion here, an update on the motion from January, and an update on the approach and timeline for replacement of water meters, and an update on the expected timeline associated with the Regulatory Appeals Board associated with this project. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Is that clear, the contents of that motion? Okay, it's been moved by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Wenzel. Further debate or discussion? Or any friendly amendments? Anything else that anybody would like to have included in that motion? Go ahead.
I don't know if the original motion was just for a certain section, or if it's actually from the lake to the bottom of Union Street.
Yeah, it's for the entirety of it.
It's for the entirety.
It was for the 5-year capital plan, everything associated with the replacement of the water and wastewater infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
So we still have the ability through the capital plan to say, well, that's not enough. We want you to go a little further, or
sure, we can.
We can't keep pushing it ahead 5 years. We can't keep doing that. We've been doing that since 2016.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the motion was to come back with options for council to consider. Yeah, and then presumably an understanding of costs associated with it, timelines associated with it, decisions about. I want to be clear in this discussion, because I know that there is also some fear amongst members of the community that the will of this council is to move completely away from deploying internal resources to execute on capital projects. And that is not the intent. The intent of this council is to have better cost certainty, better control over timelines, timely execution of capital projects, and deliberate and strategic deployment of our internal resources and making use of subcontracted resources when it makes sense. This organization has not done a good enough job of that in the past. We need to get better at that so that, to Councillor Jenkins' point, we can be sure that we're not having delays that are leading to costs rising for residents, that they can see timely delivery on infrastructure upgrades, that we can achieve those priorities of this council in a way that makes best use of our internal resources and funding projects that can be executed by vendors in the private sector. But I just want to be really clear. It has, and I've said that a couple times, is a both and, not an either or thing. Yeah. Anything further before I call the question? All those in favor? That motion's carried. Okay, last item on the public portion of the meeting is directing staff to amend the Administrative Policy 3. I added this one. Really, it's that Administrative Policy 3 is respecting council appointments and committees. The mayor and the deputy mayor make appointments to the committees, but seek input from members of council about how they would like to be involved in various committees. The way that the admin policy reads now is that there's a clause, the clause reads that at the 2-year mark, so midterm, all of those committee appointments expire, and then when new appointments are made, it can only be 50%. You can only be assigned to half of the appointments that you had in the first half of the term. In looking at this, some of our committees are just starting to gain some traction and momentum. Some of the committees have some work that would be really challenging to disrupt. An easy and obvious one is the Planning Advisory Committee is right in the middle of an interim review. It'd be very disruptive to then pull those committee members away. Then you look at, we have new critical roles within our staffing complement. We have our Director of Protective Services, who's advancing work with the Fire Services Committee. That's taking on a whole new shape. I would argue it's going to be disruptive if we shuffle the deck chairs on that one. And then we also have a new staff person in the accessibility and inclusion position, who's going to really have an impact on the Inclusion Queens Committee and the Accessibility Committee. So I reached out, spoke to members of council on this, and think that it's going to provide us a greater level of flexibility when we get to the point in October where we're looking at making new appointments to the committees. If we amend this policy 3, to include a clause that permits council, by resolution of council, to decline to reassign or rotate council's committee appointments at the 2-year mark of council's mandate, and that amending the policy, so basically just to give us more flexibility, that if it is the will of council at that time, that our administrative policy provides us with the opportunity to do that if it makes sense for us to do that, which I'm suggesting it probably does. But as a mechanism, just doing some good housekeeping here, identifying that Administrative Policy 3, the current way it reads, would bind us to really making a lot of moves and shuffling and reappointing folks. And I think to our detriment, based on just continuity and operational considerations I've just articulated. So that's why I'm wondering if there would be a member of the council who would be willing to move that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality direct staff to amend Administrative Policy 3 respecting council appointments to committees to include a clause permitting council by resolution to decline to reassign or rotate the councilors' committee appointments at the 2-year mark of council's mandate, and that the amended policy be brought back to council for consideration and adoption at a future regular council meeting. Yeah, so moved by Councillor Carver. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Jenkins. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Just to question the way that reads. So it's currently that you can't stay on more than 50%, but if we just change it to decline to do that, like, should it just say something, I'm just wondering if it should say something a little bit different so that because that suggests that it's either you're on the 50% or it's not changing at all. So I'm just wondering if we need to revise that, or maybe I'm overthinking it.
Are you suggesting that you would like me to remove the 50% clause entirely? Like either you shuffle or you don't, or?
Just thinking.
Or put language in that it leaves it up to the will of council?
Yeah. I think that there's an easier, I don't have the policy in front of me, but the clause of the policy respecting the 50%, I think an easier amendment, a cleaner amendment, I think the Deputy Mayor is pointing to here, is if you could just add the language, like, yeah, exactly, unless otherwise stated by a motion of council. Okay, so I'll have to frame this a little bit differently. I don't have the admin policy in front of me. Yeah, I have the old motion in front of me, yeah.
Could you just stay on for your term?
Yeah, I think what we want to achieve is just more flexibility by motion to council. Go ahead, Councilor Fancy.
The only other thing we got to always be careful of, the reason that 50% is in there is that all of a sudden if two people were on the same committee and they went through the full term and then all of a sudden they don't reoffer, you're starting the fresh of new councilors on that committee. And if you know someone's going to reoffer, it's a better chance of them being there. You know, it's things that you want to get people more experience if you can, but sometimes if you can't, you can't do anything about it.
Right. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I would just disagree with that, just because even if a member of council wants to reoffer, there's no guarantee that they would get
Be
their
reelected.
seat. So I think that I think maybe the other point that I would note to your point is that the resident members who make up the committees are staggered for that reason, so that the whole committee's not wiped out in one shot. I think if the motion just said to bring back policy, what was the policy number? 3, for an amendment to just add the clause, the way it currently states is 50% of committees, and then we could just add unless otherwise stated or suggested by a motion of council. That way, it's not all or nothing, and it just allows for more flexibility, but that's just my view.
I think we're all trying to get to the same place.
Can't we just direct staff to come back with an amendment to the policy as discussed?
Yeah, is that okay? All right, so I am going to, actually, Councilor Carver, are you willing to withdraw the present motion that's on the floor, just so that we can articulate a new one?
Yes.
Okay. So that motion's withdrawn. So do you want to make it, Deputy Mayor? Are you prepared to make the new motion?
I move to direct staff to come back with an amendment to Administrative Policy number 3 to allow for more flexibility for committee appointments. Does that suffice?
Is that okay? All right. Is there a second to that motion? Councilor Jenkins has seconded the motion. Further debate or discussion? We'll have a chance to look at it and debate it when staff come back with the amendment. Okay. Great. Okay. All those in favor? Motion is carried, and with that concludes the public portion of the meeting for today. Folks. So I will just, I need a motion to go in camera at this time. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Roy.